Well, Brother Collins?
Yes, sir.
All right. WLB News is proud to have Brother Rodnell Collins, the nephew of the late, great Malcolm X, and also author and family historian behind the book, The Seventh Child. Malcolm X, how are you doing today, sir?
Thank you for having me on your program.
It's an honor to have you. I just want to talk to you because I want to know some things that we need to know about Brother Malcolm, because there have been some things come out recently about the legacy of Brother Malcolm, and I just want to address from a family member and also somebody who actually grew up with Brother Malcolm in the household, what type of man he was, and also what's the true nature of his legacy.
Well, his to answer your last question first, true legacy that he has left was one of, I would say, for especially addressing young people today, of courage, tremendous amount of courage in the struggle and willing to lose his life for fighting for our people. He had an opportunity to run away and live in comfort, running from those that are trying to assassinate him. And there were more different people and groups trying to assassinate Malcolm than just what is generally believed in the public. It was black Muslims or the government. There were foreign interests as well. That was very much interested, as well as military intelligence around the world, white military intelligence, because he was a threat. He was people like himself, more so than Dr. King, because he spoke to the truth, but he was willing to lose his life. He said it himself, if he could have, not quoting him exactly, have made any kind of impact on changing the hellish conditions that our people live here in America, including Native Americans, because a lot of people have never heard before, but Malcolm always spoke about the indigenous people of this nation who suffered, as well as African Americans who were kidnapped and brought here. You never hear that aspect of Malcolm or his internationalism. We're all people of black ancestry, black culture. We're suffering all over the world, and he is the only one to this date who so clearly addressed the problems of our people and so truly here and around the world. And what drew me to love my uncle so much was not just because he was my uncle, because I had several uncles, but as a young man, as a child and a young man, he addressed the aspirations and ideas that I felt. I remember as a child when I first heard about Emmett Till being murdered because he whistled at a white woman. I mean, I've experienced that myself. I've experienced right here in the so-called Cradle of Liberty in Massachusetts the abuse, not just by police, but by European Americans just for existing and being around. That history needs to be studied. The South wasn't the problem, the Mason-Dixie South. Malcolm said himself, South was south of the Canadian border, where our problems exist. So don't put it on the whites in the South. It's a systematic problem that is in their culture. And he articulated that so well and pointed to history, not just of mouth and talking about the white man was the devil and the evils that they have committed on this planet to even their own people. He documented that and traced that so well and articulated so well, more than anyone in American or world history. No one to this date has articulated the problem of a situation that has never happened on this planet in the annals of recorded human history, where you had a people kidnapped, practiced genocide, taken from their land to another land by the millions, and incarcerate them, enslave them. It has never happened before. And to this date, it is our people in particularly are more guilty of this today, because it really needs a serious study. And this is one of the things about Manny Marable's book that does not make clear what Malcolm was trying to articulate and what he was addressing. It's not a definitive book, and I want to say here and now I have not read the book. I've critiqued it briefly. I'm going back and read it in its entirety. So I'm speaking from, as you said, my background, but also being on the inside and on the periphery of to know what the development process of this book that was done by Manny Marable and his staff at Columbia University. So it hasn't been necessary for me to read everything in the book at this moment to not comment on it, because I'm speaking from a perspective I'm well aware of a lot of the development and the process and what was going on with the finished product from the inside. So I'm commenting at the moment from that perspective. It's not a definitive book. That's a marketing situation by the publishers. I have spoken to and knew in the past and more recently to some of the staff people and researchers on Dr. Marable's, the late Dr. Marable's staff, and they realize it is not a definitive book and have said so to me. Dr. Marable originally intended, he wanted to do a 2-volume book. That was the intention. But there's a lot needed to be done. It's not something that should be taken as a Bible or as a tutorial to teach our young people. Like other books, even my own, there are different things that you should be able to take from that. My own book was condensed down to sell 200 pages. Down to 200 pages, and originally I wanted 600 to 800, but it wasn't something that the publisher felt that would be, they could sell to make their money, that they invested in it. And our people must understand, when we do not control the distribution, the publication, or anything in the media, regardless what you hear about Oprah Winfrey and Jay-Z, and these people and all the rest of these entertainers, they don't control anything. They're fortunate enough in this culture and society that the powers that be let now, unlike the past 100 years, let you see the face of the people who have developed the product and have built this country, and not behind the scenes. We've had many Oprahs before and Jay-Z's in our musicians, but their work has been sabotaged and taken credit for. That's a historic fact. Nothing has changed. In fact, we're worse off today than we have been in any other time in this history, short of having chains on our ankles. We are not, and Malcolm wanted us to understand this, for many of us, the chains are still, from that time, for the past 500 years, are still on our minds. This is what he meant by the house Negro and the field Negro. There is quite a bit of difference, and we have still amongst us an awful lot of field Negroes, and Manny Marable and house Negroes, more importantly. These field Negroes were more conscientious, but these house Negroes were just so happy to be up in the master's house. And Manny Marable fits in that category of this type of Negro. He's more concerned about the master's house catching on fire than the master is. So Malcolm, in my experience, what I admired about my uncle so much was when he had an opportunity to go and live in Ghana and teach at the University of Ghana, invited there by the then President Kwame Nkrumah, the independent president and the leader of that country, and an inspiration to the African continent and leaders of the world today who aspire to throw off the chains of white oppression. He had an opportunity to live in the Royal Palace in Saudi Arabia. He had an opportunity to live here in Massachusetts with members of his family and be under the wing of members of the family and my mother. Economically, money was not the problem. He did not have his own personal wealth. He had taken a vow of poverty. But he did not want to run. He had said to my mother, Ella, what would I look like running, Malcolm X running from people who are after me? They would use that as a tool, such as they try to destroy the image of Malcolm today, that type of image of running. And then they would use, he was a coward, he was this, and he was that, and yada, yada, yada. And then his children, he did not want to leave a negative image to his children to bear. And to see him take that stance, to see my uncle take that, he could do this. He could do this. Nobody to me comes nowhere near this in my eyes. People talk of the prophets of Muhammad, Abraham, Jesus, and all this in the past, but to live and to see someone in this 20th and 21st century who was willing to die for us. How many of us know in American history, recorded history, a people or a person that was willing to risk their life, knew their life at a young age was being threatened, to leave their family, to leave wealth, to live in luxury if they so choose, but that meant nothing to him. There's only a few, and you can count them. There's Nat Turner, Medgar Evers, Dr. King, and Malcolm X. All the rest of these pundits and poverty pimps that I call them, and armchair revolutionaries who have never been in the battlefield anywhere except for the white man to risk their life in the independent nation. You hear a lot of these so-called African Americans who are revolutionaries, men and women. Ask them how many times, what country or nation, freedom fighter army, they went out there and risked their lives. You know, black people need to analyze this thing seriously and critically. Malcolm said this often. You need to analyze a thing very critically. You know, brother, in this nation, we have not heard from one revolutionary for independence in this country who has been on the front line, taking the bullets, suffering in the bush, catching malaria, dying, starving. And there's a lot of them, a lot of women in this world who have women, but why do we not hear from them? Why forget the white man and what he has to say. Our own people, Oprah Winfrey's, Tyler Perry, all these people on these talk shows and things we hear today, Black Studies Department, including my own brother, who is a co-founder of KPOO radio in San Francisco. I have not, this is not to slight my brother in any way, but I talk to him often and been on his program. I have not heard from any revolutionaries who've been in the field that were on his program, who've been out in South America, the Caribbean, Africa, or Asia, who've been on the front line. You know, we have had those that were claimed to be on the front line here during the civil rights movement, but very few of our young people know today, and I can attest to it, because my mother had, at the time of the civil rights movement, she's joined a couple of marches, and people seem to forget many of these black people who were marching were in the South were being protected by the Deacons for Defense of Justice, I think the name was. I don't know if you're familiar with them. You're right there from Memphis, brother. I know you must have heard of the Deacons Defense of Justice.
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes. These brothers carried shotguns. They were on the periphery to protect these civil rights people. You never hear about them. A lot of these civil rights people weren't walking, including Dr. King, was not walking down the street, you know, with white people with dogs and guns and water hoses without having some armed protection. So that is the myth that is portrayed out here to fool our people, including what Dr. King represented nonviolence and how it was supposedly, or the people behind him, the white people. And this is one of the things that my uncle did not like about Dr. King's politics or struggle, and spoke so adamantly against it. Dr. King, the individual person, human being, he had no remorse or dislike for Dr. King, but his politics, my uncle saw it as treasonous, because even the nonviolent movement that Dr. King had purported to go to India and study and come back and talk about the nonviolent movement of India. If you study the nonviolent movement of India, it was nonviolent non-participation. India had an armed struggle from the 16th century until Independence Day. There were freedom fighters and revolutionaries. And Mahatma Gandhi's stance on nonviolent was nonviolent participation. And the reason for that being is because so many Indians were being massacred by the British. Study the Red Fort Massacre. There is the Andaman Islands, that prison. It was the British Devil Island, for the British equivalent to the French Devil's Island, where they would take and hang and kidnap these black people who fought for independence there in India. Mahatma Gandhi never spoke against an armed struggle. He didn't support it, but he never spoke against it. This was going on right in Mahatma Gandhi's time till his assassination, till the independence. So my uncle took serious umbrage with Dr. King and the civil rights movement putting this program across. And this is one of the things that Dr. Marable's book, From My Critiquing Thus Far, has not gone into. There are several areas it has not gone into in depth, and you can't do it in a 1-volume or 600-page book. When you're talking about such an icon and a figure of a black man who was born in America, raised in America, but who has had an impact on the world. Dr. King has not had an impact on the world, in the black world, the so-called people of color. He's had an impact on the white world because he was not a threat. Only in his last couple of years was Dr. King a threat. There is a book called, that Dr. King's last book, Where Do We Go From Here, a book that he had written, Chaos or Community. That book is not praised on Dr. King's birthday. If you read that book, you would be reading Malcolm X. And this is a book Dr. King wrote. Why do we not hear about that book? We only hear about the book that he started from in the late 50s, early 60s, I Have a Dream, I Have a Dream. That's where the powers that be, and that being European Americans, that's where they want us dreaming. They like that. We dream, we pray, we dream, we hope. Even this president have talked about hope, but he also talked about change. That's a little step there, change. But they still want us to hope, have dreams, and you have to make dreams reality. And the reality of what we've been through, this Holocaust for 500 years, Malcolm spoke about it in all revolutions and white revolutions. A revolution means bloodshed. All right, he didn't advocate violence or armed struggle in America because he knew that would not work. He was for armed struggle in Africa and Asia and South America and the Caribbean, but and supported that, but not in America. Not in America. He in one sense, Malcolm spoke more to the issue of Mahatma Gandhi more truly than Dr. King did, because he wasn't willing to give a half-baked interpretation of the nonviolent, non-participatory movement in India. Malcolm never advocated violence in this country. You can't find anywhere where Malcolm said, let's pick up arms against white folks. He advocated self-defense, but he never advocated picking up arms and going out and fighting white folks, because it would not work here. We needed a freedom of the mind. We needed to have overturn our thinking. You know, revolutionary thought is what we needed. You give a fool a gun, that doesn't mean anything. He doesn't know what to do with it. And that would not work here. It would be a massacre. And this is what Mahatma Gandhi understood. Malcolm X understood this here in America. That would not work. But, like in India, in defense, there was an armed struggle in India. And in defense of oneself, you should have arms. And they tried to make Malcolm look like he was a violent person. But we see today, even this last so-called great president, who was a member of the National Rifle Association, President Reagan, former President Reagan, believed in arms. You hear it all the time, arms. And anyone that tries to go to disarm the American white people and take away the right to bear arms, that's one of the most serious organizations in America. There's none other more serious than that organization. But it's for white folks to bear arms, not blacks. And so this is what they tried to put this type of mentality on our people even today. So we need to understand that and analyze this thing critically. Manny Marable addresses his book. He addresses some of the things that Malcolm was about. It can be one of the sources, and there's very few. There's only a few books that really go to address some of the things that Malcolm was talking about. Manny Marable can be one of those, but it's not a definitive book in no shape, form, or fashion. And as I said, I have spoken to some of his staff members, some of the main leading staff members on research. They're well aware of this is not a definitive book, and it shouldn't be looked at that in any shape, form, or fashion. But there are others. There's Carl Evans' book, The Judas Factor. There is I think Claiborne, who had done the thing to Malcolm X, FBI Files of Malcolm X, the COINTELPRO. Mm-hmm. And then again, Carl Evans' book, The Messenger. There's one other who was written by a European American, but I do not wish to give that any credence over the phone, but I will say that person had interviewed several family members that knew Malcolm, played with Malcolm as children, as adults, were in the nation, grew up with him, family members and friends. They've all passed. They've all passed now, so many of them. But there was the only white person who really went around. As a matter of fact, the person used to follow family members for months and see where they were going before he then stepped up and said he wanted to interview him. He'd done quite a bit of research, but he accentuated the negative, outright lied, such as some of the stuff that's been quoted from this person's book that's in Manny Marable's book. That's why there's, about this, whatever the sex business is of Malcolm and his marriage. This is where powers that be want our people's mind to go. And so I'm not, and others are not going to comment on that because this is a distraction. It's negative. I know what it is. It is the second book, this Manny Marable's book, the way it's come out and the way it's written. I'm sorry, not second book, but it could be a third book to try to assassinate the character of Malcolm X. There were two others by European Americans who what it was deliberate to do. You won't find any scholars. And by the way, these other two books were not done. One was done by a so-called scholar. The other was done by a journalist. But you won't find any white people in this country or Europeans do anything that is supposed to be a definitive book, publish a definitive book on late President John Kennedy or Ted Kennedy, any of the Kennedys, or Jefferson or Washington. We didn't know about Sally Heming until black people come out with it. You didn't get in. You got a whole lot of holy stuff on Thomas Jefferson and how faithful and holy he was. Mm-hmm. But this is a guy who committed incest. His wife's sister, he's having sex with his wife's sister and raping a girl, a little girl. Sally Heming was a child. But none of this is done in any of Jefferson's work that is meant to be definitive. That is for others to, if you know this kind of trash and you want to talk about it, okay, you do a little ghostwriting if that sells. And today we know this kind of crap sells. We see it everywhere from our celebrities. I was abused and this happened and that happened to me. And a lot of it, is falsified, like a lot of the rappers who have said I grew up in the ghetto and from the hood and I was on the street, and a lot of them middle-class families, That kind of thing, it sells. It's a marketing ploy. And that's what this book is.
Well, but Carl, I raised a point I thought was very interesting. He said that you did talk to some of the researchers on the book, because I had listened to an interview on NPR on Michelle Martin's show about the book called Tell Me More, and Brothers Out Here, Ali, the lead researcher on the book, he had this to say, because a lot of people are focusing on the salacious details of the book, in particular Malcolm's sexuality and about his alleged homosexual relationship with a white businessman during his hustling days. And I just want to read what he had to say about it when Michelle Martin brought it up. He said, basically, Mr. Ali, that, well, I think that Professor Marable wanted to present the totality of Malcolm for who he was. The evidence for Malcolm's relationship with Lennon actually is drawn from several sources. Actually, Ella Collins' son, Rodnell Collins, who wrote The Seventh Son, his account of his experience with Malcolm. Of course, Malcolm lived with Ella in Boston for a period of time during his Detroit Red days. And in Rodnell Collins' book, he talks about Malcolm and Shorty, which was Malcolm's running partner, having this hustle where they would, visit this white businessman and powder him down and, massage, give him a massage. He said they got the information from your book. How do you respond to that?
Yes, well, first of all, we didn't write that in our book. And if anybody's got a book out there that's got it in it, where I've said that in our book, send it to me and I'll go to the publisher, because that's something else. We didn't publish that. Talking about anything that Malcolm was involved with some white folks, because the source, when I heard about this, I know where this came from. And the source, quite frankly, it came from Malcolm Jarvis. That's the only place. And Malcolm Jarvis himself, there was a major network program that had interviewed Jarvis and went around with a camera somewhere. And when Jarvis told me about some foolishness like this, it was not Malcolm. Or there was no reason, because there were other things that Jarvis had mentioned to me that Jarvis had some issues that I find out him to outright lie about. And his stuff was questionable. Even the major network, put that stuff away. And the family knew this about Jarvis. Jarvis lived less than a half a mile from me. And Jarvis had said this to others, and then they tried to attribute it to me, that I put it out there, when they knew that Jarvis put this crap out there, and this European-American that had interviewed Jarvis early on, who wanted attention. And Jarvis got to have a reputation that, give Jarvis a few little money here and there. And I'm talking a very little money to go on to some major writer or major network program to talk. And this is what our people do. But he was always like that. When he traveled around with Malcolm, there was what I found him to be a bit of jealousy. And I know why, because in doing my research, I'm not going details here, because Jarvis has passed on. If he was alive and able to speak today and on your program, I would confront him directly and question him and let the audience make an opinion of themselves of whether Jarvis is speaking the truth or not. But Jarvis had an issue with Malcolm and his family that go way back. If you see in the movie that was done by Warner Brothers, that was director Spike Lee, but producer Marvin Worth, Spike Lee was hired. Spike Lee didn't have anything to do with this movie but to be a figurehead. That was a marketing ploy. There's a story behind that, and then our people need to research that. But in that movie, they show where Malcolm is speaking at a mosque or temple, and he looks in the back and he sees Jarvis. I'm familiar with that situation, that incident. And Jarvis started showing up here and there after that where Malcolm was, because Malcolm was getting a lot of attention. That is something, Jarvis was basically an attention getter. Jarvis used to run with Malcolm and my father before my father married my mother. And Malcolm and my father were fair-skinned, handsome, slick-haired men. And Jarvis was a short, stubby black person, not good-looking, what is considered good-looking by white women and black women of the day. They were interested in some fair-skinned, slick-headed person, and this is what Jarvis used to do to get attention, to be just hang on to Uncle Malcolm like white on rice. And Uncle Malcolm, from what I know, this is not coming from my uncle directly, but those of my family who were close to Uncle Malcolm that would go around with him, was a hang-on, and he just couldn't get rid of him. It was like, he set himself up as a mascot, so there was always issues, because he was never invited into any family's home here. None of Malcolm's family didn't want him in the house because he was always looking for attention and hang around, especially here on Sugar Hill. He didn't live on Sugar Hill. He lived in the Lower Roxbury and Sugar Hill at the time, like Uncle Malcolm said in his own book. Black people that lived on Sugar Hill, which was Malcolm's family, because that's where he came to when he came to Boston, were those Sugar Hill Negroes that thought, they had arrived. And that's Malcolm was a ticket or opening for Jarvis up until Malcolm's death. So the question of what, and I know from other sources about the foolishness of this, Malcolm's, if anything, the man was more of a Don Juan in his teen years than anything else, of women. There was just so many women that I have interviewed. The question of his sex life and his marriage is idiotic. And for someone like Manny Marable, and it was brought out clearly at AME Church this weekend, supposedly in New York City, do something. It's actually, and quite frankly, I don't believe the book as it is published myself personally. If Manny Marable was alive today, yes, he put it together. He laid himself out there, exposed himself to the white media and distribution people who wanted to sabotage the character of Malcolm X even today, or think they could. Quite frankly, I don't think he would have tried to do more, because being in the community and the people he was around and supposed to be a Marxist, I think he would have tried to do a little better job than the book that has been put forth to the general public. I think his own book has been sabotaged. That's my personal opinion, and I tell you why. Because having spoken to these researchers and knowing the background and the history of leading up to this work, you don't put on a dead man who's dead and a person of his stature at an eminent university in the world. Columbia University is an eminent, one of the most top universities in the world. It's an Ivy League school. Right. It has a reputation, and millions of dollars went behind Manny Marable's project and other things that are centered around this whole project. Millions. I'm not talking a few little dollars here. I'm talking millions.
Right.
And then put the word definitive. This is a professor who is supposed to be a scholar. It is even it's a more of character assassination of Dr. Manny Marable than it is of Malcolm X. Because what this book can do is make Manny Marable and other African Americans who wish to be in the employ of a major university like a Columbia University, and who look to be the directors of that department and seek control and millions of dollars. The HR department, human resources, can tell a black man, a black woman, well, look what Columbia did and the money that was spent on the Marable project, and look at the body of work that he produced on an icon such as Malcolm. It is a joke. It is a joke. The project is a joke when you look at it in that perspective, and then to say definitive, and coming from an eminent professor at a prestigious college. It is not something you will find in the annals of academia in American history where a professor of this stature would put out such a crappy piece of work. Now, if you're talking about some of the other people who are journalists, writers, sidearm revolutionaries, armchair revolutionaries, then that's another issue. You could say that.
Well, actually, just I think it's very interesting, like you said, that the observations you have made concerning the book, and also Dr. Marable's work in terms of his legacy with this book. Because I remember you talked about how when you wrote your book, The Seventh Child, how like the editors made decisions to cut down on a lot of different things. I know I've been listening to a lot of interviews concerning the book, and the editor that was over this project of Marable's, she said they had to cut down so much stuff out of the book as well. They had to condense a lot of stuff. Like, for example, like, you know, it was like, it seemed like they're dumbing down us on purpose, because the more they leave out, the more questions are raised, but they're not being answered. So you got answers that don't answer and conclusions that don't conclude, like what Chairman Fred Hampton would say. So, I mean, There's a lot of stuff. He didn't have, like, the final say. Like you said, I don't believe he had the final say on the book, and had he lived, I don't know if the book would have been the way, you know, it's been presented.
Well, let me tell you what one of the researchers told me just recently, that the material, because I asked this person, there was so much material at the Schomburg, more than 10 or 15 boxes, and I said, if you had just, what's there, just put it in the book. Just put it. You don't need to interpret anything. Just put Malcolm words down on paper. That's it. Don't change. Just print it. With all that's there, it speaks for itself. And not to go into any detail, but I'll give you an example what one of the main researchers told me. He said, listen, when I and Dr. Marable were able to go over to the Schomburg and look at some material that the Schomburg's people had, they only let Marable's people have access to a certain amount of documentation that they decided they were going to release to Manny Marable's staff of researchers, and they had labeled the year. Now, I got this from this person, but I knew personally myself, and I know this person was speaking from truth, because I had done my own research investigation all this time. I have been following Manny Marable. I've had professors. I've had some inside track. I didn't have to rely on whatever comes out of Marable's office from other universities and professors, white Americans, all right, and my own study and track material at Schomburg. What the researcher told me, and I was surprised that he had said this, but he has not said it anywhere else today, that Schomburg had only released what they wanted to release, and then even at that, they had tagged some paperwork that this young man had said to me that anybody who was studying Malcolm or knew anything about Malcolm in the period at the time, they had taken something and contributed all to 1964 to something that happened in the late 50s and early 60s. And that speaks volumes right there of where, that's just one aspect that has happened, and that I've had conversation with some of the researchers. Manny Marable.
Let me ask you this: like Marable said that, I spoke to him as well, that Marable said that for this book, because like a lot of people look at this book as being slanderous in a lot of ways, not only with Malcolm X's sexuality or his relationships or his infidelities, supposedly, but also his that the Nation of Islam had a great role in assassinating Brother Malcolm X, and that Marable had access to Farrakhan for over 9 hours, because there's a lot of information in this book from Minister Louis Farrakhan, the head of the Nation of Islam. And so what do you say to that, he had access to Louis Farrakhan for, a Malcolm protege for 9 hours. They had a conversation about, the history of the nation and Malcolm X and his relationship with Malcolm X. And for the book to be, that people think that the Nation of Islam had a great hand in his assassination.
Well, that's not true. That's not true. The Nation of Islam did not have. Individuals in the nation participated, but the nation, when you say, for instance, well, the government assassinated Malcolm, or the government did this, and the government did that, even white people tell you in this country there's a government within a government. All right, even the president, the present president, is the president, but he can't do. I mean, people have to think critically here and analyze. He can't do so much. Well, the president can do this. The president can do that. President can't do but so much. The way the system is set up, you have the Congress, you have the Supreme Court, then you have the military. There's things that the president, even now with the situation that happened, does not have control over. There are people who have their own agenda within an organization. And if anybody does any serious study, all right, of the most powerful government in the world with money, the government isn't broke. They can print all the money. They can dig out all the gold. They have gold and oil. American government can't go broke monetarily. They can go broke psychologically and morally, but they can't go broke. That is a myth. But that is the thing that's put out here. Our people need to study this thing on Malcolm seriously. It is not the Nation of Islam. There were those within the nation, and he said that himself, that he had trained, but had been influenced. He had also had said there was one for Ali, John Ali, was an informant for the government. Now, what does that mean when you're an informant? That means when you're an informant for the government, you're the government's man. You can't move on your own. This man that was just assassinated now over in Pakistan, and all these others, these people used to work for the government.
Right.
So what does that tell you? Saddam Hussein used to work for the government. Once you're in, you're never out, my brother. Anybody is like the mafia. You're in, you're not. You're never. Once you're CIA man, always you have certain obligations, things that you're committed to, and that commitment comes first to somebody else. Everything else is second. You owe your allegiance, your life, to that body, and that is where John Ali stood. Malcolm even said when he felt that John Ali to us was recruited, he told my mother. And in my presence, there are other things here that go beyond, and Manny Marable had access to that he could have printed, but he didn't. He chose to create some for whatever, or the handlers of this book, The Nation and Farrakhan. That's a joke. Minister Farrakhan, and I know he knows. I'm not a supporter of Minister Farrakhan because personally, I do not like knowing that the love my uncle had for him and the betrayal that the family has felt, that we all felt within the family. He loved that brother. And for him to turn around to do what he did behind his back, he didn't come to him and said, Brother Malcolm, this is what I'm going to do. He just went ahead and did it. You see what I'm saying?
But he tells a different story, though. He said that Malcolm told him to give him 2 weeks before he did it.
No, I don't care. Listen, brother, I don't care what he tells you. All right? I remember the day as a young man, I'm sitting on the sofa at 486 Massachusetts Avenue here in Boston, why my Uncle Malcolm brought Minister Farrakhan to the house to hire him, but he wanted the approval of my mother. He wanted to get feedback from my mother. If my mother had said no, Uncle Malcolm wouldn't have brought him in. There's a whole story, and I mentioned some of that in the book. So this business that he's gone behind, do your research. Aubrey Barnett was put in Chicago. There was others. There are a whole thing that's going around the nation that's already been out there in books that people just got to do, not armchair talk. Just go out and bang the pavement and go to some libraries and read some books. All right? I don't care what Minister Farrakhan, obviously he's going to say beforehand. And I understand why. He has his, just like Muhammad Ali. I've waited for years for Muhammad Ali, who we all felt betrayed Uncle Malcolm and went the way he did, but never addressed his widow, never addressed my mother, never addressed me, those that defended and protected my uncle and buried him and financed him to his death. That was my mother, that's me, and his wife. Nobody else. I don't care about Percy Sutton. All that foolishness they talk is foolishness because there are papers and documentations that show otherwise. But these people, including Minister Farrakhan and Muhammad Ali did come out later on and wrote his book to give some kind of, for lack of a better word, closure to his family of an apology. And same as Minister Farrakhan. He has made his apologies to Malcolm X's widow some years ago, and Sister Betty was somewhat satisfied with that. She was hurt, but she was somewhat satisfied, and that's a matter of public and historic record, how they reconcile their differences. Minister Farrakhan never came to my mother or me. I have never got that yet. My mother's dead. I'm here. He's never come to me, but I know how this brother is. I have some sense of his spirit, of where he is, and so I know what he's capable and not capable of doing. He's not a vindictive person, but he is a person that's going to protect his own interests. All right, and he has spoken out here for us publicly. He has been in the forefront for us publicly. So I can let my own little Sister Betty is gone, my uncle's gone, my mother's gone. I do not intend to get into any family dispute in public. Minister Farrakhan is family. Malcolm's family. Minister Farrakhan is married into Minister Elijah Muhammad's family. Minister Elijah Muhammad's family is our family. They're related through us on the Gray and Muller side down south. Elijah Muhammad is a blood relative of our family. And there have been problems the past 40 years, but it is a family problem. Anything I have issue of with Mr. Farrakhan, either he knows and I know, we confront each other. And like Uncle Malcolm has said, we get in the back room and have our little fights and come out and duke it out in the back room, but we come out in unity because we're facing a situation here that goes beyond petty, small-minded, trivial things about Malcolm's personal life. Malcolm's personal life does not matter. The lives that matter is some 40 or 50 million of our people here in this country. The hell with some damn foolishness on some triviality of what Malcolm did and he didn't do in his personal life. I'm not interested. Those of any consciousness should not be interested. We have a more serious problem that we are addressing today. We're in more worse situation today than we are ever been in American history. It's no big deal of having a president of the United States. It was going to happen one day. Hell, Rome had 6 black leaders, including popes. Okay? Alexander, so-called Greek, the Greek, his chief general was a black man, was his brother. All right? Was a black man. People don't know that. The man that he killed was his brother, a black man. Alexander, the so-called Great. His father had raped a black woman. Black soldiers were the best soldiers that he had. Black soldiers in the Roman times were the best soldiers the Romans had. Robert E. Lee himself had said in this past 18th century war, if they had had the black soldiers, they would have beaten the Union. We have always been in the forefront, the bravest, the best of any group of people on this planet since time immemorial. We are the first people, and we're the last. You cannot destroy us, only the Creator. You cannot destroy Malcolm. Can you destroy and describe in a book the 4 winds? Can you harness the 4 winds? As much as this man tries, can you? Really, let's get real. Do you want to go there? Do you really want to go there? Because the more you try to assassinate or interpret our leaders who have put their life on the line, they are martyrs who have spilled blood. They have been sanctified, crucified, sanctified, and all the other fides that you want to claim. Human beings cannot touch the soul and the spirit of these men, no matter how you try. It's impossible. Only the Creator can do that.
I mean, I wish that people would know, like what you just said. You said a lot of food for thought there that people need to really marinate on. I'd like to touch upon the fact that you talk about the blood relationship between Brother Malcolm and Brother Elijah Muhammad. See, a lot of us don't really know that. I don't think a lot of followers know that. I mean, quote-unquote followers know that relationship.
Let me tell you what I hadn't heard this as a child in family discussions, but because of what Mr. Muhammad did, my mom, Malcolm's sister, Ella, and by the way, so your audience should know, this is another play on words that people like to do, the powers that be, to divide us. You find everywhere that Malcolm's half-sister, half-this. How can you be the half of something? My uncles, my mother, never referred. You won't find where Malcolm in his own book referred to, well, my half-sister in Boston, to try to trivialize her significance and the impact, even more so than his wife, more so than his mother, that my mother had on Malcolm. My mother was perturbed and disturbed of what Mr. Muhammad and those there in Chicago were doing. And I haven't seen these so-called scholars even mention that my mother spent 2 weeks in Mr. Muhammad's house as a family member doing this mess that was going on in the early days. My Uncle Wilfred, my Uncle Filbert, Uncle Malcolm didn't like because, her going, because they knew what she was going to do. She was going to rock the boat, and sure enough, she did. She went out there as a family member, go in the back room and get down and gave Mr. Muhammad what for. The family goes way back down south. There's a long, long, long history, 18th century, all right, that goes back. My mother took umbrage of Mr. Muhammad, what she felt was exploiting and using her brothers. And when I say Mr. Muhammad, I don't mean Mr. Muhammad himself, the individual. Mr. Muhammad is an elder. And if our people study our ancient systems of how we are as a people, history, the elders are the ones. Even before a king or pharaoh in Africa and Asia and in this country, the elders are the ones that are revered and respected and are supposed to take advice and lead first and foremost. So my mother went to him as an elder to an elder to cease and desist, all right, for 2 weeks, and they did not. From that, lack of a better word, the shit hits the fan because my mother stirred the pot, all right, with her brothers, including Malcolm. And so, but you don't, the so-called scholars and pundits of Malcolm don't talk about this. They don't go into how Uncle Malcolm had R.B. Barnett in Chicago as the treasurer. There's a lot of things, or Leon Amir. There's a lot of things that my mother asked Malcolm to do to clean that mess up and to get it right because she did not want to see her brothers do what had happened previously with Marcus Garvey, with Daddy Grace, and Father Divine. She had it up because her family had been involved for the past 150 years in struggle in this country, not sitting by the wayside. It was her father who was assassinated, Malcolm's same father. It was her grandfather who had been active, all right, and her grandmother. All right, there was others and uncles who had been murdered and assassinated and hung. Malcolm wasn't the first one in this family. I mean, let's get real, and our people need to get out there and do some research. Malcolm had a father that was activist, working in the Garvey movement, struggling for our people, that was assassinated. And the white man said he put his own self on the track to be destroyed, to be crushed. He burned his own house down. They say this about Malcolm's uncles who fought with Malcolm's father. They say this about the grandfathers, the aunts, the uncles. There is a track history here that goes beyond Malcolm and being revolutionary. But this is what this government and powers that be, white organizations, to assassinate our people, character-wise and physically. So to come out about, to try to divide us as a family and using Minister Farrakhan and anyone else, I'm sorry, it's not coming from me.
Let me ask you this, though. Like, I'm really interested in, was Malcolm able to reconcile with his brother Reginald? And why did Wilfred and Filbert side with Elijah Muhammad instead of attending the funeral? They went to Savior's Day and pledged their allegiance to Elijah Muhammad. I mean, has that been reconciled at all?
Well, they reconciled. They spoke to my uncle, and they gave their answers to my uncle, and my uncle accepted that. That wasn't good enough for me or my mother, because my mother gave them what for I have been since the time of Malcolm's assassination, and they made that statement before Malcolm's death and after. My mother told her brothers, my Uncle Wilfred and Filbert, she would never come to Michigan again and set foot in their house until they gave an apology, not to the public, but to the family, and to her, and to his widow. And I had taken, even my own father, I had taken from that time, working on my uncles. I asked them to give me a reason. And I know what my Uncle Malcolm had said. He was satisfied. My Uncle Wilfred and Filbert gave me their reason and their excuse. My own cousins, their daughters and their sons, were embarrassed. My sibling cousins, they weren't happy what their fathers did. They were embarrassed. They were hurt. They loved their fathers and their uncles. But the reason my uncles gave was because they had family to protect. My Uncle Malcolm accepted that. My mom did not accept that. I did not accept that. I understand it. I understand it. But Malcolm did not run or hide or lie or do what his brothers did, even though his own family was at jeopardy. These are the prices that you have to pay. We have many family members that have lost life. The American black community, African American and Native community is our family, not just your immediate family. That's what they went on the line to defend and fight for. So to use that as an excuse was unacceptable to my mother. It was unacceptable to me. But I wanted to see, before they passed from this life, my uncles, because I loved them. I loved my Uncle Wilfred and my Uncle Filbert, my Uncle Reginald, Uncle Wesley. I never slighted them or hated them. My Uncle Wilfred was the co-conservator with me on my mother's estate until just before his death a few years ago. My mother asked that. But even though she hadn't seen Uncle Wilfred from the 60s, wow, she was not going to go into his home. So I had to get them together. I had to make several trips from Boston to Michigan to get my Uncle Wilfred and my Uncle Filbert to come and give some closure to their lives and their way of apologizing to my mother and that feeling. And all praises due to Allah. I was able to get my Uncle Wilfred and my Uncle Filbert before my mother's passing in 1996. That summer, early on, them to come and visit my mother in a nursing home. I gave them three of them their privacy, and they hugged and they kissed, and all was well. That, to me, was all I wanted. And that my mother was happy to see her brothers in her last day. So that's fine. This is a family matter. And for us, we had our answers. Everybody has done what they were supposed to do.
So everybody, all Malcolm's siblings are now deceased. Everybody's gone.
Everybody except my Aunt Hilda.
And so how do you feel about all this stuff? I mean, is she aware of what's going on with her brother in terms of the interpretation of his legacy? And because everybody was involved in the nation, right?
Yeah.
Everybody was on the nation.
Uh-huh.
And so was she on the side of Malcolm, or how did she feel about it?
My mother was on the side of Uncle Malcolm in his politics, but she's on the side of her brothers in her love. She never separated her love for her brothers. My mother wanted to get all of Malcolm's siblings to Boston when she was trying to bring Uncle Malcolm to Boston, her and my father. Uncle Malcolm, as a young man and as a teenager, as a young child and a teenager, was a guardian of the state of Michigan. My mother and my father had to seek guardianship of Uncle Malcolm. When Uncle Malcolm came to Massachusetts, he was not 18 years old. Mm-hmm. All right? He had to have guardianship. My mother was seeking guardianship and trying to support, and did where she was allowed to, all of Malcolm's family, all of her father's children. But my father Malcolm's running buddy that he grew up with, my father, in Michigan. They lived on the same avenue, South Logan. Went to college. I went to school together. There was a difference of years, of course, but the relationship was close from neighborhood and from school. My father got tired of my mother spending all of his money and her money supporting Malcolm's family and other family members, as Malcolm mentioned in his book. My father used to always, he's told me, he says, I didn't marry your mother. Just, you know, he's of a modern period of thinking. He's not old school of black culture of thinking. He had been this white culture of thinking. You know, my money is my money. My mother comes from an old school of black culture. What's yours is mine. We're a family. We're a community. If I have and my family is in need, I'm supporting them. That's what my mother did all of her life until her dying day, wherever she could, her immediate family and African Americans at large. If my mother didn't have the money to feed you, she would liberate whatever she had to do from a grocery store or a clothing store to feed some stranger that she never even knew. She's just that kind of person. She'd go to the dump. She'd go to secondhand clothing. She was just the kind of person that she could not stand by. Not only did she do that, she'd go into a community or a city and clean it up. She went to New York City when we had Malcolm X Day, and other blacks want to go down and beg the city and cry and tell them what the city should do and how we pay taxes. My mother said that same energy that you put in begging the white man, you can do for yourself. Let's get some trash bags and some brooms and clean up the street where you're going to have a rally on Malcolm. We don't have to beg the white man for everything we need to do and be on his knees. That's the kind of person. She took action. She didn't believe in talk, and waste time. That's the way she was. And she lived that life. She had no qualms of whatsoever about liberating anything from white folks. They used to write about my mother and say, well, she was a booster, whatever you want to call it. I remember one time my mother read that they said her father had stolen, some white folks had stolen an apple. How can you steal something that's already yours? Or that isn't yours? White people, she would say, stole this country from Native American people. This was open land. Native American people shared this land with these whites. And my mother said, how can you steal something that's already yours? And in fact, she said her father would not steal an apple. He would liberate the orchard. That's the thinking of this family. And they have a history of that. They would not let white people who are enemies to this day, declared enemy, not only verbally by using the N-word, but everything they do, education, economic, and welfare of this nation on us. They try to sabotage us and kill us as a people, the process of genocide. We were fortunate that we had a president who has some kind of black consciousness and a wife who has consciousness and a track record to try to get this health bill passed. He was not trying to pass a health bill to just for African white people. Predominantly poor blacks and Native Americans in this country who suffer. And these people in Congress knew that. They know this. When President Johnson's war on poverty, that was supposed to destroy the need of blacks having to suffer. And President Johnson, even whites, never give President Johnson and Adam Clayton Powell credit for what President Johnson had done in the war on poverty. And this is a white man. But what do? They go to Johnson's the Vietnamese War, and distract from that. This man, see, we need to, as a people, those whites, for whatever reason, that have fought with us or tried to help us to alleviate a problem we have in America, we need to recognize that. Not just only our black heroes, but we need to recognize some of those, not a President Kennedy. President Kennedy never meant any well-being for African Americans because there's no track record of it. But there is one of President Johnson. We can talk all day long what he shoulda, coulda, woulda, shoulda done. But he didn't.
But your uncle Malcolm, he advocated for Barry Goldwater though. He talked against Johnson and the Dixiecrats.
Yes, that's right. He did. Because Barry Goldwater served the purpose. Just like I voted for Hillary Clinton. All right? I didn't vote for Hillary Clinton because she was a white woman and she had spoke to the problems. I voted for Reagan, Bush, both Bushes, not because they represented, because that's stirring the pot. Hillary Clinton, as a white, short woman, blonde, phony blonde in this country, the Joint Chiefs would not listen to this woman if she got in there. All right? They're not going to listen. Malcolm was stirring the pot. That was psychology and philosophy at its best. He knew what Barry Goldwater was. I understand that. Barry Goldwater, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And Barry Goldwater was a prime example. This is a white racist. Malcolm was interested in stirring the pot. And stirring the pot, this would wake our people up. You see, this situation is real. This white man had in this country, brother, a program, even to this day, his own, of media blitz. And Malcolm talked about the media and how it's controlled, and it would control our people. You needed someone and an individual to upset and to make our people. Look what Reagan did for our folks. Reagan was not a friend of African Americans, but it stirred a lot of controversy, and a lot of our people in this country got scared, and they woke up. They stood up and took a notice, didn't they? Yeah. All right? A lot of people that were in slumber for some, to give you an example, look at how many of our African American women, I understand in the book publishing industry here in America, from African Americans that own bookstores, the largest portion of their books in the bookstores, they're not selling black history in bookstores. It don't sell. Our women out here buying some romance novels, something that demigrates them as women and us as men. I think Frances Scott Welsing has done the best on her two books about black women on black men and black men on black. Well, you know Dr. Frances Welsing.
We interviewed her. I know she wrote the ISIS papers.
That's right. You don't hear much about that. You know, black women had a fit on that. Black men had a fit. But this sister, as a black woman, addressed the problem greatly. What is going on in this country? But this is where our minds have gone to. You know, this is marketing. This is to distract us. This is to get us fighting each other and hating each other. All right? This is what this is about. When we're fighting, look at our people today. Look at our women out here today, how they do their hair. What was it, an actor here? He had a movie on it. You have so many of our women. I just got back from Africa, and the government, one of these several governments in Africa, brother, had to pass laws that for these white people that were importing cream, white bleaching cream that Michael Jackson was using into Africa to get white. They had to outlaw it. But you hear over here, these African leaders are not allowing democracy to come in. Well, if banning white bleaching cream that's causing skin cancer and you're messing up your mind and your family, I'm all for it. That's what they had to do. Don't take my word for it. They had to ban white bleaching cream because our women were bleaching their skin and their hair is falling out. Now, we all went through that here. You know, Michael Jackson was the last example of this. But we still have our men and women idolizing our men are after a fair-skinned sister. You know, if she's fair-skinned and long hair and straight, they're just all over her. And if the sister is black as the ace of space, they don't want to have anything to do with her. The women are the same way because they're self-hatred. As Malcolm would say, who taught you to hate the color of your skin, the curly of your hair? Black people, so many of us, so-called, they had black consciousness. They are thinking that good hair is this white folks' blonde, straight hair. If they study science and genetics, they would know blonde hair and red hair is weak. It's a mutation. It's the weakest hair on the planet. The straightest hair on the planet is Africans and Asians. White people don't have straight hair unless they got the dominant black gene coming out. Their hair they have to straighten their hair and do a lot of lie and straightening and comb just as much as we do. But our people want to use a whole lot of lie and a whole lot of other stuff to get pimples and hair fall out and all this, and our men, so-called, are around here still idolizing our fair-skinned sisters, that she's a god. And instead of walking up to a black woman every day and telling her how beautiful you are, and let her know it without letting her think that, well, the brother trying to hit on me. Well, I mean, if she believes that, fine, but we need to tell our black women how beautiful they are, because that's what we did. Respect them and tell them. This is what Malcolm was about. This is not coming from me. This is why in the nation you had to have this. You had to put these skirts on. You had to wrap their heads. You had to protect our women, because this is what's happening. This is part of genocide and character assassination. And it isn't stopping. It will continue until we address the problem ourselves.
I know, like, when you were saying that, I was thinking, like, I talked to Big Gregory a lot, too, and he said, like, one of the number one things that's killing young Jamaicans is like their lightning cream they using.
That's right.
Jamaican, I mean, this is where the country that produced Bob Marley and Marcus Garvey. You talking about some black heavy thought thinkers, and yet they have young people dying from this type of stuff. And then I look at Brazil, same situation down there. I mean, you got a large black population, but they've been oppressed culturally and economically in a lot of different ways.
Well, brother, if you, I've been on the ground in these countries more than once or twice, and not as a touristo, okay, or a tourist. Our people, you see, in Africa, you can go to Africa, brother, and I don't care where you go, north, east, south, or west. You have a hard time trying to find a black African-American visiting and backpacking through Africa. But, man, you can be in the Sahara Desert. You can be in the jungles. I mean, I get scared. And you'll find some white person backpacking over there, understanding and seeking out the knowledge that we have. You have all these NGOs that a lot of these corrupt Africans, these NGOs are paying African leaders, corporations, religious organizations are paying to come into Africa and Asia and to sabotage, okay, our people mentally. These people are serious. We are at war. These people are at war with us, brother. You see, I want you to understand something, your audience understands something here. There is a couple of trend of thoughts amongst whites here, not just in America, in Europe, that they haven't even got over themselves and their own problems. We have to understand this. They're still fighting each other. There's a difference of opinion or of each other. Now, there are those whites, if I had more time, I'd tell you where to go. This DNA, and you can research it yourself for your audience. I think one of the things your family should do, or your audience should do right here, is go get this book in 2007 that was Medical Apartheid by Harriet T. Washington. They need to get that book, Medical Apartheid by Harriet T. Washington, an African-American sister who, for those in your audience, well, what are her credentials? Well, she has an MD from Harvard, if that pleases your audience, but she has written a book from not her mind, but from the journals of white scientists and doctors in this country, the genocide that's been practicing. And it is a hell of a lot. That genocide is being practiced today in South America, Africa, and Asia. The deliberate, trying to deliberately not only destroy our people, but trying to find out how are we the first people and can live so long and live through all the hell and the disease that we've lived through. You see, there's this myth that, black people got AIDS. Well, the AIDS does exist. Okay? It's not new. It just didn't come yesterday, just like malaria or any other disease. But these whites and NGOs, you have, for lack of a better word, you have a class of whites that their mentality can't get beyond racism and their prejudice and their own biases and self-hate. Don't think for once they don't have a self-loathing and self-hate of themselves. This is why they can do what they do so well. This is why the nation, we call them the devil. You know, the master crook, the master. There's nobody, and Malcolm talked about this. And a lot of our people want to, and these saboteurs of Malcolm today, well, Malcolm went to Mecca, and he come back and he saw all of us as brothers. Yes, we are all brothers. White people are the mutation of us. They come from us. They're the last in the chain of the species of development. That's why they die. They're dying young. They are dying, my brother. Whites are dying. White scientists know this. I've sat with them here at MIT and in Europe. Hitler's regime knew this. They had a process of genocide before they put it on the white Jews in Europe. They were doing it in Namibia. The program that they tried in Europe on their own people, they were putting it on our people in Namibia, in Africa, when it was Southwest Africa was a German colony. Some of the same people that were in Hitler's administration were the sons and fathers and grandfathers previously under the Kaiser. Hitler was just a puppet. This is a war here that is serious. You have some sick whites in this world who still haven't got over themselves and have a problem. They have a problem of hating themselves. They're still fighting each other. If there's anything on this planet to worry about a war, I'm not worried about a war from some their cousins in the Mideast. I'm worried about a war from Europeans. There's some serious issues that they have with each other. And some are intelligent enough to go beyond the color of our skin and not practice this racist genocide. There are a lot of whites in this nation that are intelligent enough to know it's a tool. The system of racism is not against the color of our skin. It's against us, who we are as a people. Who we are as a people and what we represent that they don't have. And it's unfortunate, but we've been saddled with this for thousands of years. This is what the African and Asian kings were fighting from the steppes of Europe to keep them back up there. All right, because they were barbarian people. They're still developing. Don't take my word for it. Just do your archaeological, anthropological research. You have to go out and do some serious research. This is what they're doing in Africa to now. They're trying to get back. This is what Malcolm talked about. This is why Uncle Malcolm talked so much about what this white man was doing, and then some of the Muslim brothers that were white were talking about, well, you're talking about us, and, you know, we're white too, and you're Muslim. Well, Uncle Malcolm had to, you know, he had a program that he and his family had put a lot of time into. Mm-hmm. And as he said, these Negroes destroyed one of the best programs this country had had in a long time. It's true. So what do you do? What do you do when your family and generations have been sacrificing and you've been a personal one yourself that has been involved in building an organization? Do you quit? Do you run and hide? Or do you regroup? And you hear all this stuff about Malcolm, you know, he was constantly changing. You know, right. He was constantly changing. He was evolving. Well, you know, listen, anybody who's gone to a good business school, you write a business plan. You know, you come out with a program. You use it. If it works, it works. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. But if it's broke, you fix it. Mm-hmm. Pure and simple. And you move on. This man was a philosopher, a scholar, a businessman, an educator. He educated us to who we were as a people, but also the system. And we can't get off into this self-hate or hating a white man because the color of his skin. Because of the color of your skin does not make you white, just as the color of your skin does not make you black. It's exactly. A consciousness. I know a lot of black people that are self-haters. We have some scholars that commented on this book that Manny Marable that has written. They're self-haters. They hate themselves.
I want to name all three scholars to go back to what you were saying about white man vindicating you in terms of, you know, of your status in the world. And the three folks that quoted the book were Dr. Cornel West, Dr. Michael Eric Dyson, and Dr. Skip Gates. I mean, they endorsed the book, excuse me.
Well, I know Dr. personally. Mm-hmm. And I question how the endorsement came about on any of these people, but particularly on Dr. Gates. I know him personally. I know where he stands, some of how he, as an academic, how he functions. Mm-hmm. Dr. Gates was very helpful in me in supporting me in getting my book out. So I can speak from personally how our people need to understand how this thing goes. He might have read the book, but he might not have. You don't have to get someone's endorsement of the book on it to read it. I'm sorry, to get an endorsement. I'm not saying he did read it. I'm not saying he didn't. But there are these three Ivy League professors. The publishers did a good thing because Professor Marable came from an Ivy League. Let's look at this thing critically now. He came from an Ivy League school. So where is Dr. Gates from? An Ivy League school. Where is Cornel West from? An Ivy League school. Where is Michael Eric Dyson from? An Ivy League school. Right. So who better to get if you have some control over these Negroes in these institutions who are making a hell of a lot of money, my brother. Okay? They are making money just spitting. Right, okay, and they get a couple of $100,000. They're not about to go out there and sabotage themselves, all right, and with the type of money that they're making. They're not of the revolutionary type of people who will go. They're not Malcolm X's or Dr. King's, okay? They're not the Medgar Everses. Right? They're not the Nat Turners.
A lot of us tend to confuse them guys. Even Dr. West was critical of Malcolm in his Race Matters book.
That's right.
You know, if you forget about that. I remember reading, I said, man, I don't think you're getting Malcolm. Because even Dr. Marable, you can't think for Malcolm, man. It's like historians, they always say, well, Lincoln was thinking this, or Malcolm was thinking that. How you know what Malcolm was thinking?
That's right. Well, let me tell you, on Professor Cornel West's own words, when he gave a statement some years ago at Stanford, I believe it was. Check it out. He was at Stanford and gave a speech. And I believe, if I'm wrong in the university that I spoke at, but I'm not wrong, and I'm not quoting him verbatim, but what he said. But when a student, a young person in an audience, asked him about coming to a historically black college and teaching, his response, not in a word, well, those professors at that black college, historically black college, spend too much time teaching. Do I need to say more?
No, it makes perfect sense. Because even the people that they like Dr. Du Bois, they had to spend a lot of time at HBCUs actually build their minds. I even look at, for example, William Leo Hansberry, who was the uncle of Lorraine Hansberry. He taught Kwame Nkrumah and the brother who was the first president of Nigeria at Howard University. You look at Dr. Du Bois, and Dr. John Hope Franklin, they were fifth men, and they spent a lot of time teaching at HBCUs. But like some of our greatest leaders come out of HBCUs. Some of our greatest people that we were renowned for.
That's right.
Come from HBCUs.
Even W.E.B. Du Bois,
exactly.
who Dr. Cornel West, Professor, I'm sorry, Dr. Gates. Dr. Gates doesn't like me to call him Dr. Gates, but I respect him to a point in that manner because I'm familiar with a lot of his work here in Boston and Harvard University. Contrary to his support of Manny Marable's work, Dr. Gates has done some very good work at Harvard. There are some things that I do not agree on with Dr. Gates. But having said that, Dr. Gates himself, as the director of the African-American Du Bois Institute at Harvard, but Dr. Gates knows very well, and Cornel West and Michael Eric Dyson know very well, what did W.E.B. Du Bois do? The late W.E.B. Du Bois, with all his credentials and from Harvard, and all this, what did he do? He saw that there was a problem. What did he do? He went to Ghana to help set up a system to support Kwame Nkrumah. And that system, Gates hasn't done it. Cornel hasn't done it. Michael Eric Dyson hasn't done it. What government and what governments that are now using Ghana as a model in Africa somewhat to blacks to move forward on that continent, in the Caribbean and in South America, for what Dr. Du Bois had put forward, including Malcolm X around. Malcolm X is revered more outside, as I said at the beginning of your program, in this country as outside of the country than he is inside. He was a friend of Che Guevara, Patrice Lumumba, Castro, Mao Zedong, all these revolutionaries who fought for the independence of millions of our people on this planet. How many of y'all fought for these PhDs with all of their lectures and all of their troughs of money? Who the hell have they died for? What nation have they led or represented or taught? Yes, they've taught young people, but I like for any one of these eminent professors of these institutions, including my good friend Dr. Henry Louis Gates, and someone who is a self-hater, Dr. Stanley Crouch, there in New York City, who's a self-hater of himself, who sometime, I swear, he tries to be a caricature of that mascot. I swear he went and got plastic surgery just so he can play that role. But this is a self-hater. These self-haters, we have to, look at these people and ask them, do you have a student? Name me a student who has led something. I mean, were you the student responsible for Ben Carson, the first great neurosurgeon in this nation on brain surgery, who did what he did, Dr. Ben Carson? Are you? Is he a product or a protege of yours?
Right.
I don't think so. All right. How many Ben Carsons can you give me? How many Harriet Tubmans can you give me? How many Shirley Chisholms can you give me? How many? Or Fannie Lou Hammers. I mean, how many? Show me, give me one student of these people. Give me one. But you know what they try to do, my brother? They want to jump on the Malcolm bandwagon.
Right. They show the Malcolm bandwagon. Right.
Okay.
Right. Yeah,
they want to claim. They want to. But see, this is a hypocrisy. Our people, you need to analyze this thing critically. Ask them. You're young. See, I'm not concerned about. My mother used to say, separate the wheat from the chaff. You can't teach an old fool new tricks. All right? The young people, or old dog new tricks. The young people, we're never too old to learn. But these young minds, these people are put out here to sabotage the young minds of our young women and children in this country. I'm not concerned about the elders or the older people, or people my age or your age, brother. I'm concerned about my children, my grandchildren, everybody else's young child that's coming along, that you're poisoning their minds with this crap, poisoning their minds with these entertainers on TV that the children want to follow, a Beyonce or Jay-Z or Michael Jackson or these athletes that they're making all their money. And what are they doing with it? What are they doing? What institutions? Have they built any libraries? You look at any white European, white American in this country, including Bill Gates today. They've created institutions. Microsoft has the largest R&D lab in the world. It used to be IBM. The largest R&D lab in the world, highly financed. He's created institutions for his people. All right? Libraries have been built by the Mellons and the Carnegies, the Rockefellers, for their people. Universities, colleges. Tell me any of these athletes or celebrities, show me a hospital you've built. My goodness, show me a clinic. But guess what? We have some African brothers who've come over here, taken that money and gone back to Africa and built clinics and hospitals. So what the hell are we doing? We can't make fun of any African that come here. Don't laugh at these black Africans that are proud and can't speak a good English. And the way we look at them is being ugly. All right? They are a beautiful people. Yes, they have their problems. So what the hell is our problem? We've been drugged. We've been, hypnotized and misogynized. It's like Malcolm said, when you go to the dentist, you got a bad tooth, you're bleeding all over the case. You can bleed to death from a bleeding tooth when that dentist pull it out. But what does he give you? A little Novocaine, and you're happy. A little laughing gas, and you're happy. And you're bleeding to death.
Right. That's true.
I just went to the dentist myself, and I'm up there bleeding, brother. I'm wondering why Frederick's this fella, and I'm clicking. And they put something in there that makes it coagulate and stop bleeding. Because I'm looking at him and saying, oh, he's bleeding. They're looking the lead doctor and a couple other students came in and looking at me all, and I'm looking at their face and saying, what's going on? They're running around looking for this new product they can stick in the root and stop it from bleeding. Because I'm bleeding to death. And I had to laugh. And I said, oh, Lord, I'm getting ready to die. The very thing that Malcolm was talking about. I'm getting ready to die in the dentist chair. But guess what? Everything is okay. I'm happy looking out at the sunshine. That's where we are. That's where we are, so many of us as a people. And we have to understand this. And Malcolm said, analyze the thing critically. If you can go out and go to these department stores and spend a half a day shopping and seeing what you want and all this, let's analyze these people who are writing these books and talking about us. Kick the tires. Spend a day at the library. Spend a day understanding what someone's talking about or what they're saying. Don't just flip on the TV and listen to these pundits spewing, because these people are making a whole lot of money. Right. My mom used to say, well, our mind is too much focused on the dollar. She says, I can take $1 and make 10, and I can take 10 and make 100. We're focused. This is the European Americans' idea. This is their psyche. This is where their mind, because their history, they're still evolving as a people. They're not used to nothing. They want to put up fences and divide and conquer. They're trying to do this in Africa now, the NGOs, these foreign companies, trying to divide a land. Black people, you hear over here, they're over there fighting land. And land is being taken from our people over there to build. Africa is the new Wall Street. Mm-hmm. Yes, to build factories, to build farms for Europe and America, for their wealth. Black people don't have the kings and queens of Africa. Black people didn't own land. The land belonged to the people. In Asia, it used to belong to the people. Now everybody, this is mine. You got to put up a fence. They got to fight over it. This is his thinking. This is this European idea of the value of gold, money, of land. This is his material thinking that we have fallen into, and Malcolm warned us about this. This is why we have to understand our ancestors and our spirituality and not get off into this materialistic, misogynistic, all this other stuff that he presents for us. You don't look at anything that this man presents as being real or true, because even a lot of his own people out here see it for what it is. I mean, you have this guy, Michael Moore, today talking about the medical situation here in America. You don't have this kind of crap. It's on the news every other day how America, the most powerful, richest country on the planet Earth since time immortal, and yet of all white Western countries, this is not me, pay attention, people, that America is at the bottom of education and health and welfare for its people. This stuff that they're doing here don't go over even in white Western Europe, even in Eastern Europe, the stuff that goes over here. And Michael Moore, these are European Americans that are telling you this stuff, that your medical system is flawed. But what are they doing every day? No, it's not flawed. You're talking about socialists or communists. Malcolm was a socialist or a communist, they say. Dr. King was a socialist and communist. This is the blitz. This is the trick. And they give you all kinds of examples how it won't work. Well, it's working for the Europeans. They haven't had a problem for the past 50 or 100 years. Hitler's boss, the Kaiser Wilhelm, came up with socialized medicine in the 18th century. It worked for his people. It's worked in Europe. It's saved a lot of their people. They understood this at the expense of black people. The socialism of Europe now, I don't want to get anybody going wrong here. The social economic system of Europe is on the backs of black people all over this world, in Asia, Africa. We think of Africa as only being Africa. Africa is Asia. Asia was Africa. Indians in India, your folks need to know this. We're fighting the encroachment of the European from the Mideast, fighting with the Africans, and it's on the pyramids, but you don't hear a thing about this. The Indians and the Chinese were fighting together. There's a reason why Hannibal, Genghis Khan, Kublai Khan, this is the reason why Malcolm named his daughters Attila and Kublai. We fought with these people to fight the encroachment of the white man on our lands for thousands of years, long before Alexander, the name they could even thought of.
Oh, okay. I just want to ask you before I let you go. I mean, you can tell so much information. I really am enjoying this conversation and trying to get all this knowledge for myself, and so I can do all my own research But I want to ask you about your feelings. I know that I'm going to play this the night before y'all make the annual pilgrimage to Malcolm's burial site. And I know last year, and I know a lot of controversy last year about when the guy, Thomas Hagen, whatever he goes by now, he got out of prison, one of the assassins of Malcolm. And I just wanted to get your thoughts about him getting released and also about opening up a case about who assassinated Malcolm. Are y'all satisfied with what's been coming out over the years about who were involved? I mean, what do we need to do to bring justice to this case or close?
Well, first of all, let me say this personally on a personal note. My mother, myself, the woman is dead. My mother used to carry, brother, you might hear that Sister Ella used to carry a shopping bag when she was alive. This is Malcolm's sister, my mother. Mm-hmm. And around when she would travel around the country in New York. She carried a hanging aid, $10,000, and a gun under her breast on the plane, long before Al-Qaeda. And you want to worry about if you worried about a terrorist, well, the real terrorist is gone. Mm-hmm. That was my mother. Okay? Mm-hmm. She was arrested in California by the then governor, Ronald Reagan. The guard, the National Guard, arrested my mother. They thought she was going to start a riot when Ronald Reagan was governor of California, mm-hmm. and put her in jail. Now, she got out. And I'm saying that to say this. Those individuals that my mother suspected, all right, to being assassins, one of them I suspected, according to what my uncle had said, not being the assassin, but the financier of him. I met one of them, was European-American, once. He didn't know who I was. He thought I was an entertainer. I'm standing next to him. If I wanted to do anything to him, I could have done it then. But that was one man. There were people that we suspected that, you can, as my uncle used to say, that he trained the people that were, that the government used. And a lot of people, you can have a puppet to be your flunky. They've done it with this guy, Oswald. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oswald. You can have your puppets, and the puppet master can be controlling you, and you don't know what you're doing when you're doing it. You have no control.
Right.
I mean, they just killed this guy, Bin Laden. They killed Saddam Hussein. They moved Marcos out. They moved Noriega. These were all agents of governments that worked.
They're working on Gaddafi right now.
Right. Mm-hmm. All agents. Mm. All right. I don't trust Muammar Gaddafi anymore because I haven't seen a thing. I have nothing personal against Muammar Gaddafi, but I am not for anyone. I haven't seen a thing that Mr. Gaddafi has done for. I'm concerned about my people, brother. Mm-hmm. Okay. Black people here in America and Africa and everywhere else. I have not seen a thing that Colonel Muammar Gaddafi has done for black people. I know.
Oh, Farrakhan. See, he did a lot for Farrakhan in the nation, it seems. I know he had that press conference.
Well, that's talk. I know Farrakhan has got some money. I don't know a clinic. I know some mosques that Colonel Gaddafi has built. I know he has refurbished a king's palace in Africa, but I don't see any clinics. I don't see any dams. I don't see yet that was to be built that he said he was going to build across the Sahara. So I don't give a damn about a Colonel Gaddafi. I don't give a damn about nobody that doesn't care about my people, us. Nobody has a right, I don't care who the hell it is, to try to stand and take credit on the shoulders of our people who 500 years have been through genocide. White, black, brown, green, red or yellow, or some damn Martian that might even land here. You got nothing on us or to say. Get the hell back behind us. Because you have no people have suffered more than we have. We were taken. They have all these, how these movies, they have all the, I'm taken. They have movies. They were taken. This is where this white man gets this stuff, These white people don't have to write this stuff in Hollywood. They get this stuff out of, they're not creative. They steal. They make something their own out of court documents and out of history and make it their own. It's very easy to write a movie or a series on taken. We were taken. They were the master takers, still taken. They took Malcolm's even great-great-grandmother out of India. They took her and brought her to the Caribbean. They're taking us and made us what they want us and like they think they want us to be. So we've lost our language here. We've lost our heritage. We don't love ourselves. We love the man more than the man loves his own self, the more than we love ourselves. So I'm not interested in this African or Negro man who is Hagen. As I said, if we felt comfortable, and there was a few things that have happened when my mother was alive. Some things were addressed on some people.
Right.
You know, she's gone. All right. If she felt more that was need to be necessarily done while she was alive, she would have done it.
I mean, what she could
I'm not wasting my time on somebody who killed alive, who killed my uncle, when I have some fools that live up here in the back of me that are drive-by shooting, killing babies over some white man's green dollar back that the value of $1 ain't even $1 anymore. It's not even 50 cents. If 50 cents called himself 50 cents, well, he made a mistake. He should have called himself 10 cents because the dollar by buying power is only worth 10 cents today. It ain't 50 cents. He needs to check his economics. Okay? Buying power of $1 is not even 50 cents. That went out in a long time ago. That's gone. That's the economics of America. But we're running around here, so I'm not interested in my uncle's dead. All right? He's gone. I'm interested in the fools that are drive-by. You see, in the nation, we're in the nation. If you did something to us or harmed one of us, we took care of business. Whether you are white or black, we addressed the problem. You laid your hand on a sister, Malcolm would say, see to it that they don't lay a hand on them again. Break that hand. I'm not interested in chasing back 40 years to some fool, okay, when I got a young fool. If I was going to do it, it would have been done. It would have long been addressed. If other people want to get into all that, you know, bless you. All right? I'm not into, as I said, I have a brother in San Francisco, and he's a defender and a fundraiser. His name is Terry Collins, and I love my brother. And I know you know of KPOO Radio. He's done great work, him and the founders of KPOO Radio out there, the past 30, 40 years. Tremendous. He's one of the first radio programs in America to play rap music, the political rap, Latin poets, and all these guys that were coming out to get the message out about what Malcolm was. But there's something my brother did here recently with defending the San Francisco 8 or whatever, who have been accused and been indicted 3 or 4 times for supposedly killing some policemen in San Francisco. You know, and these brothers, I'm all, you know, for the support of them, but these brothers are 70, 80 years old now. And if they haven't liberated themselves or they haven't been liberated, I'm not interested in spending any money or going out to recruit any money for them. This is what I told my brother when he wanted me to go down to jailhouse. I'm not going down to visit a 70 or 80-year-old unless I'm going down to open up the cell now. Other than that, I'm going to lunch. Okay. We have young people out here in jail. I'm interested in going down to jailhouse and getting out the young man or young girl that's in there that's 17, 18 years old. And some of them are better off because the prison is some of these institutions, in these schools and high schools and colleges. I'm interested in freeing their mind. I'm not interested in freeing somebody, you know, that the issue should have been satisfied 30 years ago. By the government or by us, it should have been taken care of. That is us. So this is a distraction. This is how this works. I'm not interested in any distractions. I'm not interested in some man somewhere that supposedly whatever. If somebody want to do that, that's been approached to me several times, taking someone to court by all sorts. I'm not interested. Not wasting my time. I'm interested in our youth. In our future, the future of as the white man would say, the future of America. They don't talk about the past of America. The past is past. Let's talk about it. We're in the present, but the future. There's nothing wrong with looking at the past. You take the past, you learn from it, you bring it to the present, you use it, and you build on it for the future. I'm not interested in reaching back, because if we were, as I said, my mother, myself, there was a time that as a young man that I had access. I'm up in, and this is the first time I'm probably half saying this publicly on the radio. Mm-hmm. I had the ability, and I was in Mr. Farrakhan's home here in Boston, Massachusetts, but I was a young man, a fool, just like I took a gun and ended up in Logan Airport, and I had a lot of other brothers following me. Mm-hmm. And we ended up, and I took the risk of these brothers following me, risking their families' lives, and trying to defend my uncle and doing something in a foolish way. But as a young man, was a child, you put away, as an adult, you put away childish things. Mm-hmm. And all praise is due to Allah. I didn't commit to do something against Minister Farrakhan and his family, because it was easy as 1, 2, 3. But I didn't do it, and I was there. And I think he knows. But so I'm not interested in that. I'm not interested, as I said, if I'm going to do something, it would have been done. That's who we are as a people. That's who my mother was. That's who Malcolm's family was. We're not interested. I'm not interested in wasting a dime or time or anything on that foolishness. Okay? And I'm not encouraging anyone else to do it. We have other issues in America and in this world. That's something. Let the government. Somebody want to waste some time and spend some money. I don't advocate spending. I wouldn't spend a dime. Let it be a volunteer. Let it be one of the historical black colleges. Give it to what? Look at these people now. They're freeing some prisoners who are in jail for being wrongly accused. They have students doing this work.
Right.
Don't spend your money or time doing this stuff. Just be creative. Go out there and make it a research project. If you want to fight with these guys, something, and that's what you say, okay, make it a project. But I'm not wasting my time. I'm serious here. I'm not interested in wasting. And my mother would not want me to, because she had given this stuff up. If anything was to be done, she did what she wanted to do while she was able to do it. She didn't encourage me to tell me to do anything further or be involved in it. And anybody else, don't waste your time. She even told Uncle Malcolm, and a few years before he was assassinated, Malcolm, shut up.
Well,
you talk too much. Yeah. Malcolm, shut up, now do. This is why he got that money. She told her, I'm standing right there, all right? Mm-hmm. She did not give him money or support him in his last 4 or 5 years for some foolishness to keep talking, to do something. And he was moving. He was doing things. He was doing things like getting the money that he got from the Chinese, Mao Zedong's government, to buy arms. The CIA, George Bush one knows this, to buy arms for the freedom fighters in Africa, to recruit brothers here, to take them over there, to fight in Africa, to help fight those independent nations, to learn and educate and be on the ground. Those brothers that were in Vietnam, leave Vietnam, you got that training, go over there. Go over there and do something, dedicate. You dedicated your life for the white man, now go give your life for the black man. Those that are educated, go over there and do that. Spend some time with take over Dr. Du Bois' program. Run that program. Right now, if we had been doing way back then what Dr. W.E.D. Du Bois was doing with Kwame and Nkrumah, you wouldn't have to be having NGOs in Africa exploiting these crooked, weak African politicians. We should be there. I had even a president of a country recently asked us, why can we get, and asked the Congressional Black Congress, why can't we get more African-American businessmen? They're begging to come over there and do business. Oh, you can hear, well, it's hard to do business, and I ain't got nothing in Africa. That's all you hear. That bullshit, that backpedaling crap. It's easy to go and do a rap record and have some sisters shake the behind and make some money and go out here, listen, I'm not against. I've seen sisters on TV shaking it behind and look as good as I'm just like any other man. But the problem is, I know it's destroying our people. I don't want to see it on TV. Mm-hmm. That's a private thing. I don't, because you got a woman shaking her behind, and that's pimping. That's what Malcolm was putting in his book. No matter how you try to decorate it up, you know, you're pointing a John over here to go, and there's a sister over there looking for some money. You're still a pimp. Short of taking the money from the prostitute and put it in your hand, doesn't matter. You're a pimp, pimping a black woman. You're committing genocide. There's no excuse. But yet try to make this book try to talk about Malcolm was blowing something up, or he was trying to trivialize. These people are fools. Any crime in any shape, form, or fashion we commit against our people and ourselves is a crime. You know? You can't trivialize it in any kind of way. Malcolm was not trying to trivialize or play down the crime that he had been a part of on himself and being a part of in the community. This is one of the things I admired about my uncle, because I seen this man personally go back and try to find anyone that he had done wrong, anyone, to try to ask for forgiveness.
Let me ask you
my uncle he took at Boston University when he was in prison. He went to divinity courses. He got a certificate. There was a program being run at the time in prison for you to go to divinity school and study divinity. He got a certificate of religion, Christian religion, while he was in prison. That's not in Manny Marable. Why isn't that come up? This man was studying to be a preacher already, like in the tradition of his dad. He already had that when he was in prison.
Before he even joined the nation, he was already on that course.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
He was already on the course because the family had put him on the course, my brother. The family. It goes back to his mother, his father, his grandfather, they were all deacons and he would have been a preacher no matter come hell or high water somewhere. But in the revolutionary sense, not out here, you know, poverty pimping, like we have so many of them doing today. You know, going from the street pit to the pulpit, but still hustling. No, his father wasn't that. His father was a carpenter. Malcolm studied carpentry. Malcolm was going in the same line. He saw himself go in the same line when he was in prison of the prophets. Malcolm even studied carpentry, and he made 4 jewelry boxes when he was in prison. We still have 2 of them left.
Oh, wow.
They're collector's items. He wanted to be a carpenter like his dad, all right? One white author said, yeah, his father was a carpenter. He built outhouses. So you had outhouses. What big deal? Yeah. He knew how to build barns, too. But that was supposed to be, you know, this is what these people do. A slight, this is all his father did was build outhouses. Oh, his father, you know, his grandfather, his father, he stole an apple. An apple, that's an insult, man. At least try to say he stole the truck that transported the apples.
I want to ask you this, because I think it's very important. Man, you raised some great points and stuff, man. Like Michael Eric Dyson did, he got a show he does, a radio show, and he did basically say that everything that Marable wrote in the book was true. I know he had David Garrow, the King biographer, co-signed everything he said. The only thing David Garrow said he got wrong was how the FBI worked in terms of how they did their internal procedures. But he agreed with the book. So you got these people that represent these powerful institutes agree with the book, but then like it calls into question the whole autobiography scene. Like, you know, so there are composite characters, and they say, like you said, they try to make slight, saying that he embellished or over exaggerated his criminal history. And I keep wondering myself, so his West Indian archery, was he a real person? Because they make all this stuff call into play. I just want to get your thoughts about that, and also your thoughts about the autobiography in general, and also about the author, Alex Haley.
Well, Alex Haley, first of all, so your audience will know, Uncle Malcolm wasn't going to do a book. Originally, do a book, and Uncle Malcolm did not trust Alex Haley. And I'll tell you the reason why. We had a cousin of ours, J.C., who Uncle Malcolm knew and grew up with, a first cousin. His name was J.C. Little, James Little. He was in the Navy, and he was an inspector of Navy ships and submarines. He had a clearance, all right? And one of the things, and to have a clearance, Uncle Malcolm knew this so he knew Uncle J.C., and he went, he's a cousin, but I call him Uncle J.C. He went to J.C. and asked him to do something about checking out Alex Haley. You know, Alex Haley was he was worked in the Navy also, and he was, at the typewriter. You know, you can't be a black person in the Navy. Most black people in the Navy is a swab in the deck or they're a cook. That was a privileged job Alex Haley had, and you have to have clearance. All right? Alex Haley wasn't typing memoirs in the Navy. He was a sailor. You had to have clearance. So Uncle Malcolm did not trust, and when he found out who Alex Haley was, he did not want to be bothered with him. Alex Haley as an individual human being, as a person, no problem. Alex Haley background, who he worked for, was a problem. He did not want to do the book originally supposed to be done on the Nation and Elijah Muhammad. My uncle didn't want to do it. He wasn't going to do it. But the problem was at the time, for Malcolm, he was poor in every sense of the word. Only thing, he took a vow in the nation of poverty. And this was an issue with him and Aunt Betty as time goes along, because Aunt Betty being a mother and being pregnant, Uncle Malcolm, basically, when he gets his stipend, he's giving his money away for some bill that's paid, that needs to be paid, or some light bill at some mosque or something, and somebody didn't do correct bookkeeping, and the lights are getting ready to be shut off, and he's visiting the mosque, and they're saying, Brother Malcolm, my light's going to be turned off. We ain't got no money. He'd go in his pocket and take out his last hour. Here, go pay the light bill. And so that's the way he was. There was an interview some time ago about his former captain, Joseph. Uncle Malcolm was wearing old suits at Morgan Memorial. Joseph said we had to take a collection and go buy the brother a new suit. Uncle Malcolm didn't believe in all that money and self-grandizing himself and wearing clothes and cars. They had to buy him a car. He would walk, take a bus, or whatever. He didn't want a car. After he got it, he liked it. It was a nice Oldsmobile. He loved that car. But he was not interested in these things, and the autobiography was something that he wasn't going to do, but my mother told him, and I remember the day she told him, and I'm listening to this. She said, Malcolm, when it came around that the people behind Alex Haley, let's do a thing on Malcolm, my uncle wasn't going to do it, but my mother said, listen, your father died, left you folks, his children, poor, not one paisa. My mother was going out to Michigan, and Malcolm's father's uncles, who I had in my book, that worked for the railroad, and Uncle Bato or whatever, was always giving money to Malcolm's mother, long before she was on some welfare and long before Malcolm's father was assassinated, because the father was on the road, and this woman has to raise children. And the Garvey movement was no rich movement. He did not have all this money. So they were struggling economically. So my mother was sending money, family was sending money. So my mother said to him, listen, don't leave your family if you get killed poor like Daddy did. Write the book and don't leave him indigent, because the way it was going, me and my mother would have been taking care of Aunt Betty. And as a teenager, I was not looking to take care of 6 girls. I was interested in doing my own thing.
Right.
Okay? And I was like kind of panicking and freaking out myself. Okay. 6 girls, right.
Did y'all feel that he was going to live a long life? Y'all already felt that at the time that his days were numbered?
Yes, we knew. He knew that. We knew that. And so you prepare. If you're not going to run, you prepare for what you have to do, and that's what he was doing. And the book was what you needed to do to get it out there, have a legacy for your children, have a legacy for our people, and then you would have some income, because Aunt Betty signed off to the lifetime rights to the movie on Malcolm in 1972 to Warner Brothers and Marvin Worth. So the family does not, Malcolm's children does not benefit 1 penny from the Malcolm X movie.
Wow.
Economically, not 1 penny. And the
That's
family
crazy,
has,
man.
Malcolm, that movie has made, I know about 3 or 4 years ago, worldwide, $500 million. They have not, and that is a crime. It's an issue that, unfortunately, Aunt Betty, as a young woman, she was given bad advice, and this is what happened. And the person that gave her advice was no friend of Malcolm's 100%. He was a fool. But this is the advice, that it benefited him. They had no vision. The only vision that person had as being advisor to Betty legally was his own personal self-aggrandizement.
Was it Percy Sutton?
That was Malcolm's lawyer before Malcolm died, and Malcolm's lawyer afterwards. I'm not saying Percy Sutton was a person, but that was my aunt's lawyer afterwards for a very long time. So the advice that she was given, Malcolm's family has had to pay for it to this day. In the meantime, Marvin Worth and Warner Brothers have benefited from it tremendously. So the autobiography is something that was a rushed product. All right, this other stuff, I know that personally. The publishers and the movie industry, 20th Century Fox and Columbia Pictures, came to my mother, wanted to do something with Louis Lomax. James Baldwin was to write another book, a follow-up. It didn't happen. So these scholars, they haven't done any work, or they're talking crap, or they know very well what the real deal is and the story behind the story. But they know, like the media out here, that Americans don't go out and take the time and do research. Americans only watch the trauma, and the drama on TV. They don't watch NPR on the average. They don't listen to PBS or watch PBS and listen to NPR on the average, especially of a lot of our people, because they're busy trying to make a living. They're busy trying to forget the problems of the day or of the time. All right? So these so-called scholars, they're hip to this. They know this, but it benefits them to create controversy. They know it's going to be controversy. They know very well this book. And as I said earlier, the researchers knew this that I've talked to. They knew this book was done. There was supposed to be a second book. Just as I said, the researchers had intention. Dr. Marable had intentions of doing a second book. There were going to be two books.
It makes a lot of sense. Because, like, I didn't mean to cut you out, but David Levering Lewis did a 2-volume work on Dr. Du Bois.
Yes, and so did Taylor Branch did a 2-volume book, and the researchers said this to me. Taylor Branch did a 2-volume book on Dr. King, 2 or 3 volumes. They knew this was where Dr. Manny Marable was going. So these so-called scholars out here that are talking this crap or yin-yang, this is, they'll get on radio shows and pundits. You see, they're not called out to speak on the so-called war on terror. Okay, right. Or they're not called out to speak on the economics of America. They may be called out to speak on the economics of black people. But yes, really, are you? You're an eminent professor at Ivy League College, making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year as a teacher and as a researcher, as an author and a lecturer. But still, you want to take an icon, someone that has lived a life and people have recognized and comment on it. You mean to tell me you don't have anything else to do with your time? Who are you kidding? Who are, I mean, this is disrespectful to us as a people, my brother. This is very insightful and disrespectful. They're trying to incite, at the same time trying to disrespect us as a people, being controlled by the puppeteer. All right? Malcolm got the book out. Alex Haley did the best he could with what he had to work with. Dealing with Uncle Malcolm, dealing with my mother at the same time, because Alex Haley used to call my mother and ask her opinion, and then get on my mother to ask Uncle Malcolm to come and spend some more time to work with him. There was a whole thing that came out this Sunday that Alex Haley was psychoanalyzing Malcolm when Malcolm used to doodle on the napkins, and Alex Haley would take the napkins and have him analyze, what Malcolm was doodling. Listen, I laugh at that when I heard that bull crap, because guess what? That was a game, Uncle Malcolm. We used to laugh about it. He'd tell my mom and me. That was a game. He knew Alex Haley, what he was doing. I just told you. We knew Alex Haley is an informant, so that was deliberate. Let's have a little fun.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that was a joke. Uncle Malcolm is not... Listen, the man wrote poetry. He studied philosophy and psychology. He had enough time in prison to have 2 or 3 PhD degrees. He read, thought all the time. We are a people. We have to remember we are a people of great thinkers. We're the creators of civilization and the firstborn of humankind. The Creator didn't put us here to populate this earth and to civilize and to build nations and nations, many nations. As Dr. Garvey used to say, out of one come many nations. I'm not quoting him correctly, but this is who we are as a people. Now, we don't think so because the man says we're not. So Malcolm was in that line of a great thinker and an educator and a philosopher and a scholar. He taught at Islamic University there in Chicago. Malcolm would take his time and go teach at the university. Some brothers, philosophy and psychology, and linguistics. This is what he would do because he was a great studier. He didn't go to a Harvard or Columbia University or Stanford under the auspices of some European American who's busy even sabotaging education to his own people, speaking the full truth. He had access to other resources outside of public library. So Malcolm had to get a book out, get it out fast, and do what he had to do to get the money coming for his family. That was the numero uno thing in dealing with Alex Haley. There was going to be a second book if he had lived long enough. Okay, lo and behold. And there was the writing for the second book. Now, whether I knew it was in these boxes, because I've seen the stuff myself put in the boxes. I know how the boxes came to be in the government's hand and turned over to the daughter's hand and turned into the library because we threw the boxes out. I'm one of the ones that took the boxes along with Leon Amir and put them outside the house to be thrown into the garbage. I've already said why that happened and how it came about. But thank heavens and all praises due to Allah because, sometimes, governments can do more, think they're doing harm, and can be helping you at the same time. Well, at the situation at the time, it was a big help because they took them boxes. I mean, we're doing this. This stuff was going in the trash, my brother. Me and Leon Amir. And my mother didn't stop it. I didn't stop it. Aunt Betty didn't stop it. Nobody stopped it. But the FBI boss and the CIA is right outside. They're watching what we're doing. They took that stuff later on. And now you have these boxes, okay, that are in the library. Okay, it's public knowledge that the Justice Department turned this material over. The Justice Department of the government of the United States they were gracious enough, and I am thankful. All praises due to Allah. I am thankful because I had committed part of a crime. I couldn't have done worse, brother, if I had gone and stuck up the Federal Reserve. I was part of throwing my uncle's material away.
But y'all realize what y'all throwing away. Y'all realize it's important. Y'all really realize its total importance to the.
Oh yes, we realize it. But the reason for it, I've explained in the past, and I believe I put it in my book. But it wasn't because we wanted to destroy the material. It was a family situation at the time, and I'm not going to go into detail here right now because of this time factor. But it was because we were afraid that something would happen, and so we did this so something else wouldn't happen. But fortunately enough, what did happen, I know the government, and it worked out fine because the government saw what we were doing. Boss, listen, we're right in the alley, and boss see us put in the boxes. And I'm looking right in the white man's face. Okay? So I knew, and they knew. They had microphones and all this stuff on, tapping our phones, listen to what we were saying. This disc thing that you have that you could listen to people having a conversation from the distance while they're in a car in their home through the wall. That thing didn't come out in the 70s or 80s. That thing they had in the 60s, late 50s and 60s. That was old technology. So they listened to everything that we have to say. There was no such thing as just wiretapping. Okay, the technology, when the government talks about technology and lets something out, is already 10, 20, 30 years old. Already they've been playing with it, and they only let it out now for whatever purpose they want. So I'm thankful that the government, and I'm thankful they turned it over, and I had thanked the FBI for that. Through an agent. Now, the work is out. It's the autobiography. Wasn't what we wanted, wasn't all what Uncle Malcolm wanted, but it's out there. The money was the objective for the family, and some kind of document from Malcolm. Something. That's what my mother wanted. So we have that. Now we have to move on from that and do the best we can. And Manny Marable knew this. He knew this very well. But it creates controversy around a book. And so I'm not going to, outside of your program, I might do my own blog and maybe give 1 or 2 more interviews. And as far as I'm concerned, that's the end of that.
Well, yeah, I appreciate that. It's an honor. I know I'll run over time. I just want to ask you 2 quick questions. I want to ask you, I'm really interested in knowing more about your thoughts about Leon Amir, because I know he said he knew things about what happened to Malcolm. Then the next day they found him dead in his hotel room, and I knew the Fruit of Islam beat him severely before that. I want to know, like, what was his relationship with Malcolm and with the family, and what your thoughts are about him. And
well, let me ask you a question. Do you know where? Let me ask you a question. You knew he was murdered, right?
Yeah, I knew he was murdered. They said he took sleeping pills, overdose, but I knew it was a murder. Just looking at what happened to him over that year.
Right. And where did he die?
In Boston.
Mm-hmm. and who was he? And who? I'm trying to help your audience out here.
Mm-hmm.
Think about this now.
Mm-hmm.
And where did Malcolm's sister live?
In Boston, in Roxbury.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
We lived in Roxbury, the South End, and Duxbury, but at the time we're in the South End.
Okay.
Now, and who was Leon? What did Leon Amir? What was he trying to do? I want to see how much knowledge you have, brother.
Well,
what did he say he was trying to do to Malcolm before he died?
What he was trying to do before he died? I knew that the day before he died, he tried to expose the government involvement. He had information on who killed Malcolm.
All right, and and what else was Leon Amir what else did Leon Amir say that he was supposed to do?
I'm not sure about that part. That's the only part. I know what I'm saying.
He's the one, all right,
mm-hmm.
that from the Chicago office, was supposed to come out and was ordered to come out because he had expertise in how to make a bomb, okay, from experience, to blow up the car on Malcolm. You didn't hear about that?
No, I didn't. I knew the Marable book, he got this guy named Folkman, who was James Shabazz' roommate. He had some experience in the Navy. He said he was approached by Captain Joseph X of Mosque No. 7 to blow up Malcolm's Oldsmobile. I didn't know that Leon Amir also had that same. I don't know if Marable got it wrong, but he don't attribute it to Leon Amir.
Well, the first one, I don't know about this brother in the temple. I know Leon Amir, and it's been testified to the police and to my mother and to Uncle Malcolm to us to blow up. He went to Uncle Malcolm. It was to blow Uncle Malcolm's car up. And then he became Uncle Malcolm. We used him on the periphery as a bodyguard. Then when Uncle Malcolm wasn't, was being too loose with his freedom and not security-minded enough, which we didn't like, Brother Leon Amir came to Boston to plead with my mother and stayed with us for about 2-3 weeks, as I recall. And it was before the bomb. As a matter of fact, it wasn't. Let me back up. It wasn't Leon Amir and I that put the boxes out on the side for the government to get. It was another brother who's still alive.
Okay.
Bear witness to that. He's still alive, and I have not mentioned his name or put it down anywhere because I've asked him would he come public one day because he's witness to that. But Leon Amir came to my uncle and confessed that he was trying to plan on blowing him up and who had sent him and yada, 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 all this business. What happened to that, he came to my mother and we had our office on 486 Massachusetts Avenue, what is less than a mile from a hotel that is now part of it's a building that's part of the Berkeley School of Music. Then it was called the Biltmore Hotel, the Sherry Biltmore Hotel. And Brother Leon Amir was pleading with my mother for Uncle Malcolm to get to Uncle Malcolm to take better security measures. All right? And the FBI, the Boston police boss, everybody knew this. He was being followed, including the Nation of Islam. Even Temple number 11 here in Boston, he was being followed. He could only protect his life, so he carried, weapons on his person, and we had our weapons, and we had our own dogs. But, at that time, because I used to go down the street and walk the brother back to the hotel for his own, so he wouldn't be by himself, day or night. So, and the police the police would be following us. The FBI would be. I mean, the FBI was sitting outside of our house sometime when Uncle Malcolm comes. So it was nothing, any big mystery. And this was when he got killed. For him to be killed and for it to happen there, how it did, the government had to either be in on it, do it, or watch the people do it and didn't do anything about it. Okay? They let it go through. They knew who the people were. They had to, because Malcolm and my mother and myself, we were followed, and our phones were been tapped up until they were still tapping our phones until the 70s, and then they stopped. And then later on, I think up until late 70s, middle 80s, they were still tapping your phone, okay, and doing things. The government, the Congress of the United States investigated my mother back in the 60s while investigating Malcolm, where was Malcolm getting the funds to go overseas. And so they were investigating Malcolm, subsequently to come to find out that it was my mother. So then they left that alone. And then from that time on, the Congress of the United States knew what was happening. They initiated the Intelligence Committee to do a background on my mother and myself. So there's a huge dossier. That has not been released to the public. We have not seen it. You have to ask yourself, with all this COINTELPRO and all these professors, how come we don't have anything on my mother who publicly it's known that financed Malcolm? Okay, for his trips, for those first from 1960-61 till his death, and buried him. How come you don't have anything on my mother or myself, other than the fact that I was in the tunnel with some brothers with a gun? Ask yourself that question.
That's a good question to ask the ponder.
Okay, and this is a thing that was initiated by the Congress of the United States. Ask yourself that. So where is that file?
There's a lot of questions, more questions to be answered than answers.
Well, all these eminent scholars, I mean, they know all these eminent PhDs. My God, the PhDs these people have, and you put it together, my brother. Come on. Ask yourself that. Okay? Ask yourself that. Look at the books that have been put out on Malcolm. How come how come there's nothing on my mother? And then how come you don't talk about where are the speeches, the minutes that Malcolm had given to the OAU and to meetings in Africa and the Mideast and in London? Where is that material? With all these great scholars and all this money, what with the millions that Manny Marable has, where is it? You know, most of the stuff that he has. Yes, it's been analyzed from what I understand. He's put a lot of stuff in there, but a lot of stuff has already been out.
Well, I want to just clarify. So, is the family still getting royalties off the book, or they sold the rights to the autobiography too?
No, they didn't sell the rights to the autobiography.
Okay, just the film rights. Okay, that's interesting. I also actually just wanted. I'm sorry about this. It's so fascinating. You got a lot of information. I want to know: was there a schism between your mom Ella and Malcolm's widow? Or has been overblown? Was it like a falling out?
It's overblown. It's overblown. There's no more schism than between any time in any family when you have a strong. Listen, let me tell you something, brother. Me answer that question. My mother disowned me. Okay, she disowned me for a while. She wrote me off her property and her will. She told me one day, I'm not raising a boy, and I'm not working hard to leave so you can go and splurge what I've worked hard for. And talking about some woman that it was a girlfriend at the time that I was dating. She didn't approve. She said I didn't approve what Malcolm was doing, and she said I approve what you were doing. And she said that I'm not supporting it if you were going to marry this young lady. At the same time, I'm just giving a little background. I had a problem once. I was arrested and in jail, just like Uncle Malcolm. She said, I'm going to do to you what I did to Malcolm. When I was in jail, she wouldn't bail me out. Uncle Malcolm, there's a whole report from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Norfolk County, that I had some white people call me and looked at the records that were sealed. They said, this guy had no business going to jail, let alone going to court. Okay? But it's a myth. That didn't come out in Manny Marable's book either with all this history. But my mother told you what I did to Malcolm, simply because I didn't behave like she wanted me to, and I wasn't towing the line. She said, I said, what was that? She left me in jail, didn't bail me out. She let me stay in jail and rot. She said, if I can't do to you, I'm going to let what the white man do to you, what he did to Malcolm. Maybe you'll learn. Okay? Well, that straightened me out because I didn't want to be disowned. I didn't grow up poor. So I'm thinking about, hey, I don't want to be poor. You know, I don't want to grow up poor because I had some friends who were poor and roaches and rats crawling the wall. So, hey, no. I didn't want to go there. You know, I must admit, I'm a little spoiled. You know, as Uncle Malcolm said, up on Sugar Hill. Yeah, I was up on the hill too. Okay, partly raised on the hill, but my mother wanted to make sure that hill Negro wasn't in me. All right, when I grow into a manhood, she said, I don't want to raise a boy, I want to raise a man. So she worked on that, and subsequent to that, when you have a woman that is that strong, including pulling a bullet in the head of her own horse that she loved and rode. Uncle Malcolm used to call the horse the devil. I'm telling you a little story here. He used to call this horse on our farm the devil because it was a white horse. Nobody could ride it. And the horse, we got a big town record in the court of Plymouth, Massachusetts, how our horse would get out and just run havoc through Plymouth County on people's farms and other horses and their pastures. The poor horse got sick one day. The only person that could ride that horse. And Uncle Malcolm used to wonder in amazement, how could this horse, a white horse, you know the Long Ranger's horse, right? And well, the horse was like that. And his name was Silver also. Only person that come near Silver was my mother, because Silver would kick you. He would raise up in the air and try to kill you, but not my mother. I have a picture of my mother on Silver, and he was very gentle, but my uncle called him the devil. One day my mother had to put a bullet to Silver's head because he was dying and killing him. As a child, and being a frightful child, when I was growing up, and a child very sick and in asthma, and a bedwetter until I was 12 years old, you could look at me and yell, and I was so frightful I'd have an heart attack and pee in my pants. Okay? But my mother and my aunts, having asthma attacks and being a sickly, skinny child and don't want to eat, they worked with me over the years to make sure I become a healthy young man that I am today. I'd like to think so, anyway. But one day I remember my mother went to put the bullet in Silver's head, and I thought we were going to have the horse and drag him out. No, she said, nobody's going to get Silver. The woman cut Silver's head off, gutted Silver, skinned him herself, made me take the head, put it in my wagon, and drive it and wheel it to the lake and dump it. And I had to hold the head. My mother at another time. I'm giving you a picture of the kind of woman dealing with. Married 3 times. Because of her 2 husbands were not revolutionary and weren't activists, she divorced them. She said, I don't need you. Her 3rd husband had money. She said, if you're not willing to take care of your son and your responsibility, I don't need you. I shouldn't have to beg you or take you to court, and I'm not going to drag a black man into court for something that's your duty. You can keep your money. I'll raise a son. That was me. This woman was the kind of woman that, like I said, she's going to raise a man. All right? I'd like to think I'm that. I would like to think so. I hope I've come somewhere near what she wanted. Now, you take a woman, and I just given you a tidbit of what kind of character my mother is. The Japanese just wrote a book that had my mother in it in Japanese. They wanted to focus on Malcolm, but my mother as well. When you have a woman that is this strong, willing, independent, powerful, strong, Southern black woman, dealing with another black woman who was 22, pregnant, 2 babies in the stomach and 1 in the arm, and raising other children. You see your husband assassinated in front of you, blood fall back and the blood running on the floor, and you're pregnant. And then who loved her husband dearly. I used to see some of the things my aunt would do to get my uncle's attention because she wanted some attention and love and affection. And she just craved it all the time. And, you know, he's the man, he got to go out the door, and just things he couldn't always be cuddling her, you know, and leave. She did never want, if they would have had 100 children if he was still been alive. But this is how it was. So all this other crap, you know, is foolishness. So what she did, you know, she, as a wife, and as a 22-year-old, when she married Uncle Malcolm, you know, all women want attention from their man. I'm carrying your baby, for Pete's sakes. I'm going through hell. People trying to kill you, you know, trying to kill me, blow us up in the house. And then you got another strong-willed black woman telling this woman that's pregnant, hey, stand up, don't cry. Let that man do what he got to do and leave him alone. So I went through this and seen this. But my mother loved my Aunt Betty. She didn't like everything she did. My mother tried to, you know, on occasion tell Aunt Betty. My uncle even had to tell my mother sometime, hey, come on, you know, leave it alone. but he didn't get, let me tell you, he was careful when he got in the way of these two black women, okay? Very careful. I mean, if you could walk light, he was a feather on the eggshells, okay? He'd back off, okay? But these two women were close, all right? My mother loved Aunt Betty because she was black, beautiful, from Georgia, okay? And so, no problem. They had their issues, okay? But especially dealing with my mother. Uncle Malcolm had issues with my mother, okay? Because my mother's a strong-willed person. She's a strong-willed person. And he's written letters to that effect. Where are those letters? They've been exposed. Manny Marable, I'm sure, has seen a few. So where's that? There was no, this little petty, any small, childish, small-minded foolishness that somebody is trying to perpetuate and scintillate, you know, and make it sexy, and by whatever means. You know, this is what sells today, brother. I learned this as an athlete and people in Hollywood some years ago, and I was told as much, okay, by a person who I was fortunate enough, when writing my book and trying to find an agent, it was a person I consider a dear friend. He was Jim McCormick, who was the founder of IMG, one of the largest agencies in the world for athletes and controlled tournaments, multi-billion-dollar corporation. I met this man as a professional tennis player years ago, back in the 70s, and became friends when he was trying to start his company. And years later, I gave Jim a call. I told him what I wanted to do. He said, give me a call back in an hour. He put me in touch with one of his executives, and we talked. And one of his executives asked me, Rodnell, I understand from Jim that you want to, these are European Americans, you want to do a book on, who is this? Is he your Uncle Malcolm? I said, yes. He said, well, what do you want to do? You want to make money, or do you want to write a book? Well, I want to write a book, yeah, but I also want to make money. Duh. He says, no. He says, what do you want to do? So I didn't get it for about 3 or 4 times. And I said, well, I want to make money and I want to do a book. You can't do both. Right. I said, why? He says, that's not the way it works. So, what do you mean? He says, Rodnell, if you want to make money, what do you have? What can we scintillate it with? I said, huh? He said, what can you tell me? You got any dirt? Right point. He says, from Jim talked to me. I know who you are. I'm telling you right straight out. Now, I'm not going to, Jim McCormick is passed on. The conversation that his executive and I had, to my knowledge, Jim McCormick was not on the other end of the line. And I'm not going to tell you who the executive was. Right. But the man said, listen, this is the way it works. So you want to make money, you got to scintillate it a little bit. I said, you want me to lie? He says, I'm not telling you what to do. Do you want to make money? Right. Okay? And I said, yes. And he says, okay. He says, then what you got? And I says, but I want to tell my uncle's story. And we went on. And he says, what? No, that won't work. He says, you got to do one or the other. So I opted to tell the story. And even at that, he gave me some advice. But Jim McCormick, that division was just starting up, and I moved on from there. But I learned from that lesson. This is the way it works. I've learned from the publishing industry. I learned from people in Hollywood and Wall Street how these white folks function. This is the industry. This is the industry. Okay? You don't need creativity. It's a media thing. how to control people's if you're weak-minded. You know how some brother, all I have to do is say, are you married?
Oh, no.
Okay, well, you have a girlfriend.
No, I don't have a girlfriend. No, sir.
Okay, well, you know some brothers that are married and have a girlfriend. You know if you have a woman that loves you, your wife or your girlfriend, even your mother, if you even look the other way, you know some women think all men and all us black men, if we admire and see a beautiful sister, we want to grab her and take her home to the bedroom.
Right.
You know, that's the thinking. Well, you know, and I have that sometimes for my wife. And you know what she tells me? And I tell her straight up, listen, I married you. I'm not interested. I'm not one of them going to jump and run down. Why, I told her straight out, if every woman I looked at and seen, I'd either be dead now or my head or everything else would be cut off. So that's not where my thinking goes. So she said, well, at least you can do it. Not when I'm around. Don't let me see you. I said, what's the problem? She said, that's not the idea. So, you know, people are going to think it. No matter what you do.
That's true.
No matter how you explain. You just have to learn to behave yourself and leave it alone. Okay? And I learned this from my mother. When she didn't tell me about all this part. Part of trying to make me a man, she wasn't thinking about that part. I had to learn some things on my own. Okay? That wasn't her job. That was my uncle's job. Because my father my parents divorced, so that was my uncle's job. Okay? My Uncle Malcolm, Wilford, and Filbert, or whatever. So all I'm saying that is to say this. You know, if people want to get off into some scintillating business and tantalizing and believe, and your mind is that small, there's nothing that can satisfy you if you're that small-minded. Look at what the man was about. He wasn't about sexism or going out of here educating people on how you can get a woman and have sex. He was about the problem of our people and how to solve it. He didn't just rant and talk about rhetoric. He was a part of an organization that were building characters, women and men, MGT, GCC, Muslim Girls Training. Okay? That's what MGT stands for. FOI, Fruit of Islam. From the tree is known by the fruit it bears. Develop men. Educational courses in Fruit of Islam was not about discipline. It was about your mind, your manhood, what you were supposed to do. Classes, home economics, teaching, philosophy, psychology, approach, social concepts, ideas. You know, some of the things that our people in Africa and Asia that have had in their culture for thousands of years. Hillary Clinton took the phrase that it takes a village to raise a child. Well, that's hundreds of thousands of years old. That's what our people do. In Africa today, a true African, I know many Africans that say my brother's child or my sister's child, that's not only their child, it's my child. It's everybody's child that live in that community has a responsibility to raising that child. This is us as a people. We are a spiritual people of our faith and what we believe in our African culture and language and belief systems, our ancestor worship, our, appreciating our ancients. This is what we are about. This is what was that had been brainwashed. This foolishness out here, a brother marrying a woman because they're going with a woman, this is my business. What I want to do, and a sister vice versa, I don't have to talk to anybody. This is my man. This is what I want to do. That's why we have the highest rate of divorce in anywhere in the world. Even in so-called third world countries, they're supposed to be doing bad off. Okay? They don't have that problem. But here in civilized America, so-called the economic power of the world, we have these problems. So if our people want to go there with this kind of thinking, don't waste your time. Don't waste your time. And if you want to find out more about it, create your own sexual ideology or whatever you want. Make something up if you so choose. That's what's already happened. Why are you interested in Malcolm's sex life? Unless you're some kind of freaky deaky that wants to get in the back room and you get it on by looking at pictures and videos. Quite frankly, I never understood that. How anyone, with all the beautiful women on this planet walking by, a man has got to go look at video or pictures. I'm still trying to digest that as a man myself. I don't get it. I know brothers that do it, but I only a few. That stuff is attributed to Europeans. Incest. It's still a thing, incest in family. Mother, daughter, father, sister, brother, niece, aunt. They don't care. Okay, that's not us. That is not indigenous to our culture. That's why this homo thing or homophilia doesn't happen. It's not indigenous to African culture. If that's who you are and that's how you turned out, that's your business. Keep in your house and shut up. But they're trying to push this on these African governments in the Caribbean and in the islands. This is why our people are having problems. That's an issue you addressed within your family and within the community. Yes, you're a human being. You respect the human being. If they have a problem, you try to deal with it and address them. You don't castrate them or hate them or kill them. People have issues. We've always had issues and problems amongst people. But you address it, but you don't endorse it or fundle it. This is the thing that you have this light-minded people who want to go there with cheap thought. I'm not just interested in that. And this, as I said, I'm not interested in going there. I've discussed it with you here on your program, to which I'm grateful for. I might mention it at some point in time, but not go into any details or justify or try to clarify, because that's where I'm not trying to help market Manny Marable.
But like this, you talk about the nature of the beast, though, and I think people need to know that, because I talk to people who were, involved in Hollywood, and they talk about what they force you to do in order to get ahead, the nature of the beast. And so you're not that far off with that executive story you told.
Right.
About how, scandal is better than the truth.
Right, right. Not only that, brother, we can put it on Hollywood and we can put it on Wall Street. You see, I'm by profession, I'm a systems programmer, and I don't know how old are you, brother, but I remember some years ago back in the 60s, and I remember something, Uncle Malcolm. This is philosophy and psychology. Planting. We used to talk about planting a seed. Farrakhan knows this. Planting a seed in someone. Now, I'm not talking about a sperm seed now. Right. If you want to go there with that kind of thought, I'm talking about planting a seed in someone's mind. You know, the art of intimidation. There's a book called The Art of Winning by Intimidation. You should get it. Winning by Intimidation. Muhammad Ali did it very well in his boxing. He would talk to Uncle Malcolm used to talk to Muhammad Ali about this. You had those words, you could philosophize and rap and do this. Uncle Malcolm wanted Muhammad to direct that to another course. Use that mouth. Okay? This is why they didn't want Malcolm around Muhammad. This is why he could do what he could do. Malcolm is the one that directed Muhammad Ali. You had this ability to run off with speech and words. Direct that. Muhammad Ali was Cassius Clay before. He wasn't in the nation. He didn't come to the nation. How did he get to the nation? People need to look at this. All right? How did Malcolm find him and discover him? And what was Muhammad Ali to his last day? He was successful. How was he successful? He wasn't interested in trying to pound a brother into the pavement and kill him. Okay? With mental thought. Okay? How to suggest. The power of suggestion is the power of winning by intimidation. I remember in the 70s on Wall Street had a philosophy on TV of how to market. Flashcards across. You go to a psychiatrist. Psychiatrists in the old days, they used to show you these cards and ask you with some kind of scribbled up ink, what do you see? See, this is all part of that. How to inject a thought, winning by intimidation. Power of suggestion. The power of suggestion, brother, to people is very powerful in winning by intimidation. You have to study psychology, philosophy, okay, and how the mind works. This is what you need to do. This is what Malcolm did. This is why he was the most sought-after person, more than the President of the United States, for speaking and lectures. This is a matter of fact. He was sought after colleges more than white people were sought after, but the black colleges didn't seek him. Okay, the white ones. Why do you think so? It wasn't the black colleges that made Malcolm the most sought-after speaker in America more than the President of the United States or any president that was alive during his time. Why is that? These people want to pick your mind. And I've seen white people at Harvard, Columbia, wherever. I used to watch these people. Uncle Malcolm used to tell me, right now, I would always come in and play, come in. I'm just a little boy, I don't know, little Negro boy in the back sitting, I don't know nothing. I'm just, and I sit amongst these white people. I didn't come in with the brothers. I'd sit and, see what they had to say and what their response was. Something Uncle Malcolm, my mother, always wanted me to do. Observe a thing. Study a thing. That's what Malcolm used to say. Study the nature of a thing, and then you know how to deal with it. So I picked up on that from my family and learned an awful lot. Awful lot. Study a thing. So I used to, as a child, I was taught this. My mother used to teach me this. Consider the ant, she used to tell me. Consider the ant, and she'd have me sit and look at these ants and watch what they do. Okay? All right? And don't step on one. Because you know how children like to see a pile of ants, you like to step on them. Sometimes nowadays I like to, I see a pile, maybe squash it, hear him squash. And I think, my mother. I walk around the ant pile. I leave the daggone ant alone. They're builders. She used to tell me, be a builder, not a destroyer. Be constructive, not destructive. People who have destructive thought and create destructive actions shall be destructive. This is something in my family. Uncle Wilfred, Uncle Wesley, Uncle Malcolm, all taught it. Don't go there. If you got to be swearing, words can hurt. And if you attribute negative things to a word, it becomes a negative action. And then it becomes part of your negative thought. There's the positive and negative. Focus on the positive thought. You see, you follow what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
Okay? This is what you do. So if you're going to be idle time enough, focusing constantly on negative thought, you can never do anything. So this man is, we used to call him a tricknologist. He functions on people's negative thought. He targets the negativity in you. Okay, this is what he targets. This is what, and this is not nothing new. This goes back, what they talking about, Aristotle and Socrates and Plato, all this stuff. This is stuff that was studied back in the ancient times by Africans and Asian culture. Okay, that goes back long before. This is where these people got it. Okay, they got it out of the universities of the library that Alexander destroyed in Egypt. They got this stuff and took this material, okay, back to their domain to study, and they're still doing it today. So these kind of things, you don't spend your time going there, because the impact that it can have on you yourself and your ideas. Whites like to talk about these people are great thinkers and great thought. They're not. They're not. Okay, they're not great thinkers. Most have an incapacity to just give you an example what I'm talking about. Why is black music? Now white people buy more rap than black folks do. Okay, why are black athletes the most dominant athletes in any sport once we're in it? And this is just sports and song and dance and acting. Okay? What about the sciences, the technology, the stuff that's been out there? There are a lot of us, and they snatch us off. There was an Indian sister that was black that I met some years ago. She could calculate the biggest problem that faster than the IM computer. They just had this thing on Jeopardy, and these guys beating this IBM computer here last year. There was an Indian sister. Why do you think the white man is in India and most of his work is outsourced to India? You think it's just by some happenstance? Oh, it's economic. The Indians are, the black people are very, very intelligent and smart. It's not just the money aspect of it, okay? It's because our thinking, our thought patterns, our process is different, okay? It's like you hear people say they're tone deaf. There's a reason for that. Why? These are human beings. These white people are human beings just like us. So how come they process? How come they've been the most, in all the history of the world, no other species, or lack of a better word, race, because there's no such thing as race, there's no other species of human being that has decided in these eons, in these hundreds of thousands or millions of years, decide to travel the world and the continents and just, and conquer and kill and rape and plunder and pillage people. Only the white man has done this. Only him. Only time we've fought each other is in defense of some trivial thing, you crossed the line, or you dishonored. Look how honor in Asia, in Indian, Japanese, African, Chinese culture, honor. The white man didn't have no honor. We did. Honor and respect for family. That's thousands of years old. As often as I go to Africa now, I'm learning and I'm understanding more, and I understand more about what Uncle Malcolm. But they're trying to have our people over there think you're a savage. You don't know anything. In the meantime, he's siphoning off all the knowledge and the wealth he possibly can, and indoctrinating, infuriating, intimidating, and committing the process of genocide. They right now in Africa are they got our own people injecting some serum in African babies, telling the woman that, this is something that will help your baby for malaria, and you inject it in the baby's brain, into their skull. There's a whole lot of stuff going on. But this is what goes on. This is what the enemies of our people do. But he thinks he can destroy us. Well, he didn't create us. You can't destroy the black man, just like you can't destroy Malcolm. You cannot. In so doing, he will destroy himself. The universe and the planet is old, and we are the first people. The Creator created us for a reason. It won't work, but try as he may, he's a destroyer.
Right.
They make comics about destroyer. Everything the white man does is about him. It's all about him. He's the superior one. Because he's trying to convince himself. Our people need to really look at these people who haven't evolved. There are a number that have. There are those that have. There are a number of white people who don't think as white people. And mine, I said it first, white isn't the color of your skin. Just like black is, it's a philosophy, it's a psychology, it's your consciousness. All right, there's a lot of black people walking around here that are white. Yeah. Awful lot of them. All right, you hear some of the young people say, "You act white." In some instances, it's true. They don't know what they're talking about, but there's something they're picking up on. They can't quite understand it, but they sense something's wrong. They're thinking. They see something ain't right about what you're doing. They don't understand it, but they done picked up on something is wrong. You see, they're not talking out of their head for no reason at all. There's something there. It's like you hear people talking crazy sometimes. They're not necessarily crazy. Try to pick up on what they're saying. Mm-hmm. Try to understand. It's a brain like any other person's brain. Maybe they see beyond something that you can't see. Maybe they can see the forest for the trees. But you can't. You can be in the forest and still don't see it. Right. Some people outside can be outside looking in and see everything that's in there. You see what I'm saying? Okay. So Malcolm talked about this and taught us this. This is something we have to understand and critically analyze. So, to your audience, don't waste your time. We've been incarcerated here for 500 years. 500 years. We're 500 years, brother, from Earth, more or less. We're 500 years from Earth. The Creator has put us here from wherever or however to be the first people, the beginning, the Alpha and the Omega. Right. We have been blessed. We have been blessed. And so don't get off on this other stuff that a lot of our people are lost, like a disease. You can't, anytime I find that when I find any of our people that have studied in a white institution, I have children. I have them study in the white institution. There's nothing wrong with that. It depends on what you're studying and when and how and what you do with it. Because we're in their society and their culture. They built for their people. So we're functioning within that. You have to know how to function within the realm you're in. But that does not mean you cannot step outside of that and learn something for yourself. I have found that when I find people that who tell me I have a PhD from Stanford or Emory or University of Florida, this and that. Oh, very interesting. That's nice. Okay, that works. That works here. It works for some corporations. That's to get a job and a dollar. You're thinking like you've been conditioned, okay, for that situation. But I want to find out, what have you studied about African, Asian, ancient philosophy and psychology? What have you studied? The origin of mathematics and science. Okay, the Dogon people who Nassau has used their charting of the Saurus system. You got a daggone company that's named Saurus. They named it after our people in Africa who found that system in the cosmos. Mm-hmm. How did they find it? Hundreds of years ago. thousands of years ago. How did they find it and chart it? NASA has set their bases based in Guyana, South America, and in Africa. They're NASA based when they want to launch a ship based on that Saurus system initially that we found. So what is the problem? You can't study African, Asian, ancient philosophy and psychology and mathematics and science. And these scholars, we have many, of modern times today, of modern times. We have some great, like I said, Dr. Ben Carson.
Mm-hmm.
How did this brother come up and figure this out? He did something that was outside of the realm of his education or outside of the realm and condition of thinking from a European perspective. You know, you're thinking outside that realm to have that kind of ability and confidence. So that's what we have to do. And whenever I find someone that has told me they have their PhD degree from some white university and they haven't studied some of the ancients or some of, look at China. How did China step out of the box? And now they're talking about in 9 years, brother, eliminating poverty in China.
Mm.
And the white man said, you can't do that. Well, listen, you're a Western white culture, and you're at the bottom of the Western white cultures in the world as far as health, education, and welfare. You're at the bottom, even for your own people. So what's going on? And here you have a people that within less than 40 since independence, huh? Mm-hmm. And really the white man is basing it on the past 30 years, how China, I've seen the development. So what happened? India has the same colonialists under the same oppression. But what happened in India? How come? How come India hasn't moved along as well? What's the problem? You have to. These two countries have half the world's population, and one has gone into hyperspace, and the other one's still crawling. And then our people wonder what happened to us here in North America. What's happened to us, Malcolm has told you, but you're not listening. You refuse to listen. You want to listen to the white man. You want to listen to what he says that you should listen to. You want to study his institutions and his philosophy and psychology. White man is always talking about, look outside the box, reach outside the box. Well, how come we're not spending more time? All our children should make a point. I do it with my children. I teach my children. I have my children go abroad and study other philosophies and psychologies all the time. And they're in American institutions, and it's helped them. This is what blocks us. You have to think outside of his thinking. And my children at a young age now, they're amazed they see the difference because this is how I started them in their development. You will find that anyone who grew up in the Nation of Islam and comprehend what Malcolm was saying and then had a family, you look at those old Nation of Islam families and those that continue on, you will find them very successful. What is considered to be success in a modern American life, okay? They're very successful, if not monetarily, intellectually, intelligently. They're successful. They're not part of this foolishness, and this is where we have to go. There are those who are who have picked up on what Malcolm's talking about, and there are others. So many of us have not.
Well, Brother,
yes, sir.
No, go ahead. I'm going to experience. I know I've been running over time, but go ahead.
No, so once you understand that, then you'll be able to, and deal in that, then you'll be able to go on from there and deal with other things. And a challenge of racism. I've seen East Indian families right here in Roxbury, where I'm at, one of the worst educational systems in America. And as bad as this system is, and you have a sister that now comes from down your way. She's our new superintendent up here in Boston.
Oh, yeah.
You know about that, right?
Dr. Carol Johnson, yeah.
Right. I don't know much about her work that she's done there, but according to our mayor here, Mayor Menino here in Boston, she has done tremendous work down there. I don't know, but what I can say is brought her up here at whatever cost, but our people have been complaining here about the violence and the education, but I can tell you that I've seen Africans right here in this community go to some of these same terrible schools, and Asians, black folks, and how the families have raised their children. these children, I know of one particular family, this Indian family, who raised their children right here in Roxbury in this school, went to the same schools, these terrible schools. But the parent spent enough time with this child, and the system of thought, just like the man has a system. This race problem is systematic. It's not color. This white man focuses on color. I see a whole lot of white women die. You look on the TV, all these white women that are going blonde. They have a problem too. They're phony blondes because they're into this color thing. They know it works, but they're traumatized as well. But how do you get out of that psychological trap, that system that's embedded? So you make the system work for you. Understand it. Don't become part of it. Analyze it. Critically analyze. I've seen these families do this and bring their children, and one particular young lady, I'm going to tell you what happened to her. She was Indian. She grew up in the community. She wanted to work in the community. She went to work in the community in one of these schools. She went to college, came back to work in the community, and what they did to her and how they sabotaged this sister, she had to leave the community school. And then the white school's picking her up, though, in white suburbia, though. They snatched her up. So that's where she is now. But she wants to get back into the community. But she came out of this community, and she's a foreigner from India. And there are others, some Muslims that came over that are living in the community. The children are doing very well out of this very system. In Africa, you can have 200 or 300 children and one teacher. Education is key over there, and the children starve. Africa's going to have a problem. The white man's going to have a problem. Because these black children, I'm astounded how intelligent they are. I mean, they pick up something. I mean, they suck stuff up like a sponge. So white man has a problem. As long as some of our people are teaching them, you know, as to who they are. Because you got all these white Christian church people over there teaching them and training them for their white industry as cheap labor, but still brainwashing them, just like they did in Asia. That's why China didn't allow too many of their people out to be brainwashed, and this is why they built a nation. They only allowed a few of their people out. But this is why this white man talks about this democracy. He's not talking any democracy. He's talking what Uncle Malcolm would call democracy is black man's hypocrisy. This is hypocrisy here. And our president is backed up against the wall in this thing. He knows it. He studied Malcolm at Harvard. I know he did. He was at the law school. President wrote the law school journals. The tapes that Dr. Betty Shabazz, Malcolm Whittle, sued Harvard for, that published a book on the speeches of Malcolm at Harvard. Okay? I know from Dean Epps, who was Dean of Students at Harvard for more than 30 years. I know from Dean Epps that this president has studied Malcolm's tapes. All right? So he's not mindless. And he's admitted himself, I think, on a couple of times. He's read some of Malcolm's stuff. But so he has some consciousness. But he wanted to be in this man's system to think that he could change it. And because it's obvious. You see who he married. He married a black woman who come from us. He didn't run off like some of these other fools. So I respect him for that. And as I saw that he was running, because I was voting for Hillary, my brother. I just wanted to stir the pot like Uncle Malcolm. I wanted Hillary because I saw this woman when she came to Boston, and we took a picture of her, and I put my arm around the woman. Just she was when she was at school here, she knew what she was doing. She was a foxy little white woman, knew what she was doing. She wasn't blonde either. That blonde stuff, like all the rest of these white women, she bought into it too. The woman she's almost a midget. All right, she's a little shorter than my wife. When I saw this, I said, ain't no way Joint Chiefs are going to listen to anything she has to say. But how they can maneuver her and use her and manipulate her, okay, so that's fine with me. I like stirring the pot a little bit, okay, I like that. And it did work out, but I didn't have to vote for her because I was watching this man that running for president. Initially, I saw, some things that but he played it smart, being a house Negro. But he played it smart. And then I saw a few things in some debate that I picked up on that I'm familiar with, that he very, very And then I learned about some people that are sponsoring him, heavy hitters that are really behind him on the money part.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so very smart. But my thing is he backed into this thing, all right? And I think he thinks he's going to back out of it clean. You can't be a part of this man's system and not get burnt. They killed Malcolm.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So they might try to do whatever they can to him, the character. I mean, they're trying the character assassination. That's what this birther thing was all about, to discredit, to distract, to destroy. And they use the stupid fools. They use these stupid women and a few of these other flunky white folks, puppets. They're nothing but puppets. Just like Hitler was nothing but a puppet. These are just foolish people they throw some money at. They know who to pick. The powers that be know who to pick. The thinkers of this nation, the white thinkers, they know what they're doing. The leaders of this country, they didn't build this country, brother, come from Europe on some foolishness, or, want to party and dance all the time, every Saturday, Friday night.
Right.
No, they knew what they needed to do to get away from these royals and aristocracies of Europe. You look at the ones that come over here. These people were nobody. These are the dreads of Europe, the prisons. But they figured it out using the example of their background over there and seeing what their people did. So like they say, they found a new nation, and they're proud of it. You can't blame them. They're proud of it. But we need to learn from that. It's like Malcolm said, he used to travel around Boston here and look at the historical sites and analyze them very much. I remember something that in writing my book and doing more research and backtracking on Uncle Malcolm, and I did not realize as a child when Uncle Malcolm, he used to go to Washington a lot, in the Library of Congress, and study. And he'd like to go to Washington and sit up in the balcony and listen to Congress when they're talking about passing bills in the House, the Representatives, and the Senate. So I started doing that, too. And I did not know when Uncle Malcolm was sending us cards of memorials and monuments in Washington what he was doing. And I still have some of those postcards. And I remember when my mother was... and also to show you the kind of person my mother is, the black national flag we have now, the red, black, and green.
That's right.
My mother is responsible for that. This was the colors were Garvey colors. If you go back and check, the Garvey colors were arranged different than what they are now. My mother, when she buried Uncle Malcolm, symbolism is important. Symbolism throughout history, we're a people of symbols that represent things. If you know anything about Masonry and Masonicism, there's a whole lot of which comes out of ancient African and Asian culture, symbols and what they represent. She understood this very well. So she used Malcolm as an image or a symbol to represent us. She wanted him to stand, his death to stand for more than just a death and pilgrimage to a cemetery on May 19th. What she did was she asked, she explained who she was to Dr. Garvey's late widow in New York. They knew who my mother was, Dr. Garvey's widow. She asked Dr. Garvey's widow could she have permission to, and I have the letter from Dr. Garvey's widow, to rearrange the colors to make it the national flag, and this is how we're going to do it, putting on Malcolm's grave. You get them to honor Malcolm, they're honoring the flag. That is the best in us, what Malcolm represents, just like R.Z. Davis said. And so we have a flag, and you see, I just recently, I have a thing from a magazine, a fashion magazine, that shows Fila Sports, which is Italian. They done gone and put our colors on the Fila outfit. Okay? But you find this color everywhere, and it's being respected in America a lot by our people, for us. So I'm happy to see that, and this is something that, through Malcolm's death, that my mother, amongst other things, was able to get across. It's a symbol to have an impact. This is planting a seed, brother. This is what you do. You don't have to go out here and talk and rip and rant and rave. Now that black flag, I'm even wondering how did they get it overseas and got the Islamic sword and palm tree on it. I'm saying, okay, I don't remember that. Okay, all right, however it got there. But we have it here. We have it here, and it's a symbol for it. White people with their ethnic background, they have the Greek, the Norwegian, the German flag in their home. Why can't we? The American flag is not us. We don't have any African nation flags here. We needed a flag. And so this is our flag in this nation. We can honor the American flag, honor the state flag. You go around this country, you see people have the American flag, their ethnic flag. They have the state flag. They got all white folks got all kind of flags. But you have these so-called pundits of these so-called black scholars. Why do we need a flag? Why do we need these people are in cahoots with the devil. They are usurpers. You see, that's what they're put out there for. You know, like the angels of death they talk about. That's where they stand, a lot of these people. They're out to try to destroy the impact that Malcolm had on our people, just like Dr. King or Medgar Evers or Nat Turner. This is what's happening. So when you understand all this and deal with it, you'll understand Malcolm.
I appreciate it, Brother Rodnell. I know I kept you longer than I expected, but you got so much great information. And you sound like Brother Malcolm, too. I don't know if people tell you that. You sound like your uncle, so I know you come from great stock, great trees.
We all come from the tree, brother. We all come from motherland. Don't cut yourself short. You got it. It's there. It's there. You just dig down deep. We're fortunate. We're the first people, as I said. The Creator didn't make us the beginning of all people on this planet. Everybody else is mutated from us. These white people know this, brother. They know this. I've studied this with and taught to white scientists at Harvard overseas. The Hitler regime knew this. The DNA, you check the DNA, the research of DNA goes back to the Hitler regime, the Kaiser regime. There was a reason. They were trying to find, they knew this. How the hell we were the first people and been here so long? They know they're a mutation. Everybody's a mutation from us. This is why you hear that the first one come out of Africa. And everybody's connected. It's true. It's true. So why did the Creator do that? That's in us. I take issue when I find a sister or a brother that want to go have a baby, because you got some of our people now in Africa, Asia, and whatever, they're just so anxious to have they want to have a baby by a white man so they can get some money. I have a light-skinned baby. Listen, if you want to marry the white man, okay, that's what you want to do. You messed up, or marry a white woman, but be careful about having babies. Because I can tell you, because see, this was in Europe back in the 80s that I know of. This is science. This is not, people say, oh, that's that Nation of Islam stuff. No, it isn't. This is science. White people are dying genetically. In the genome, they're the last of the mutant species of the human beings in the genome. Their genes are dying. And so they have to reintroduce the gene. You know, you go from the bottom, you have to reintroduce it back to the top. Okay, that's what they're talking about now. You hear them talking about genetically creating a baby by some guy who is smart and intelligent. You know, that's what's out there publicly, all right, to have a baby. Well, why do you want to have a baby by somebody who's dying? You go to a lot of hospitals. Even the United States just put out a thing, the Department of Health put out a thing that how many, and they're talking Americans. They didn't say blacks. They broke it down to blacks, but they said in general, the average baby in America, 1 in 3 are born with chronic illnesses, and 1 in 2 are born with something else that all has to do with disease. But it's more than disease, brother. It's a psychological thing. There is a chemical that is not producing in the brain, and there's some other cells and stems that aren't firing. Okay, they're not firing, so it's a misfire. And some things are happening upstairs. And it's just a mutant thing. This thing you see in the movie now, Mutant Ninja Turtles and Mutant. Believe me, there's more to it than just Hollywood has taken files and history and science and turned it to make an industry on it. There is a problem, and our people need to pick up on this and study it. All right? Don't be having babies. If you got to marry and be bound with someone, find you a dark or a black Italian or a black Greek. Don't go off marrying no English or Irish, pale, blonde, blue-eyed, because what you're doing, if you're going to have your children, you'll be inheriting maybe a bad DNA strain, and you'll have problems. You'll have psychological, emotional problems. They're telling you, science is telling you now that children that have emotional stress. That's why all this pharmaceutical companies, why you know the biggest industry in the world is pharmaceutical? Why you think they're making billions of dollars? They got you thinking out here everybody's sick and got this disease and all that, whatever. It has to do, white people are dying. I learned this from them 30 years ago, spending time in Europe. They're dying. They know it. They're trying to arrest the system. Okay? I had a chance to spend 3 days with a woman, a white American woman, who was one of the founders, the finders of the genetic genome that has Hodgkin's disease. And this is a white woman. There was 3 scientists, and she was one of them. And as a young woman, I had an opportunity a few years ago to be with a group of scientists over here at MIT in Massachusetts, thanks to my wife, who had some connections with some very wealthy white people that she was able to get me invited to this conference that were a group of wealthy people and scientists. I'm the only darky in the room, the fly on the wall. Mm-hmm. And these white people were curious, how did I know about this stuff? And so I had an opportunity to be with an old white woman, and we had some time to talk about some of the stuff in Europe. But she was pissed because she never got the recognition of her finding in conjunction with these other 2 scientists, men. They got the award and she didn't. She just got it now. And now she's in her 70s or something. And finding the Hodgkin's disease, that bad genome or cell. And she's just now been recognized. So we went on. She's still in research, even at her age. And we went on and we talked to, she introduced me and hanging with her, some other people, and come in discussion. And these people looking at me like, and I'm looking around. I said, there ain't any more black folks here. Only 1 or 2 black women is on some European American's arm, So what I'm saying, I'm looking at her and I said, this fool, I just hope she doesn't have any babies. Because you don't know what you're doing. Be careful. Be careful what you're doing. Because you have babies and you wonder why your child is having some psychological problem. It's attributed to that person's cell. He's dying, some negative cells. Just like a man's sperm. He doesn't have enough sperm count. And you can't have baby because you don't have enough. It's that simple. Well, why is that? And they attribute it to drinking, now, and it's true, but there are other factors long without in your brain. There is a chemical that you produce, and there is a firing of a nerve system that fires. And a lot of things are failing now. They're failing. It's just the weak genes, and, they're dying off, and it's just happened. They're petering out. And, if you keep marrying each other, as they've been doing, a couple of 100 years ago, they were white man's running around the world and conquering the world, so they're able to breed back into the dark genome, the Greeks and the Romans. And it's worked very well. You remember when they were talking about, they tried to push that thing off that black people had sickle cells. It was black folks thing. Sickle cell. Come to find out, it ain't a black folks thing. But you had our people running around, I got to get sickle cell. And once in a while, I still see some black people, we got to get a sickle cell shot. Because it's a black thing. Black people are predisposed to high blood pressure and heart trouble. That's the biggest crock. Ain't no black people in no Africa predisposed to no high blood pressure and heart trouble. Okay, the Creator didn't make us like that. We couldn't be the people that created all other people come from us if we had all these initial problems. The Creator wasn't creating the cosmos and the universe. You think the Creator was stupid? We are the gods of this planet and the supermen, and they know it. But by negative thought and by the things we do to ourselves, the Creator, we're not His God. He's our God. We're just the gods that He put here on this planet. And we have to understand this and analyze this and move on. So I hope I've helped your audience and give you some enlightenment on Malcolm, what he talked about and what he was about. And maybe you'll pick up on this. This is why I tried to destroy who Malcolm was. You won't have another person. This is the last time. You won't have another.
Well,
talk about the day of judgment. This is now the day of judgment for our people.
Oh yeah, I definitely appreciate it. This is like 2 shows right here that I'll be able to do because of talking to you and listening to you talk. Somebody said knowledge speaks, wisdom listens. And so I want to ask you, you remember this will be my last question, and you go be on with your day. But I really appreciate you taking the time out talking to us. But do you remember the last conversation you had with your Uncle Malcolm?
Yes, of course.
What did y'all talk about? Was there anything that you could share with us?
Well, the very last conversation, private, just me and him, not even with my mother. There's been last conversations because the last days after the bombing of the house in New York, and then trying to buy him a house to live in, and then we're staying with Tom Wallace's family, actress Ruby Dee's brother over in Queens. Malcolm's family are staying there, and they put us up at their own risk to Brother Tom Wallace, to him and his family's life. So, there were private conversations amongst, family and friends, but directly one-on-one, my uncle to me, and it's something that has stayed with me all my days, and I, when burying my uncle at the grave and covering him up, and I grabbed a shovel, and I didn't want the grave diggers to bury my uncle. I wanted to bury him, and then other brothers, I was a pallbearer at his grave, along with A. Peter Bailey, who worked with me on the book. Peter and some other brothers then jumped in, and we covered my uncle's grave. I'm sorry, but I felt that I wanted to do that for him in my expressions of my love for him, because something that he had given me that is the most precious thing to me, and his aunt, his father's sisters that lived with me had died. My aunt Sarah died a few years earlier, before he was assassinated in 1961, and she said something to me on tape, and she had given me a blessing. And coming from an elder, but Uncle Malcolm, he called me in relationship to what you were asking me, your question. My mother was fixing him supper, and Uncle Malcolm was in the living room on Massachusetts Avenue, 486, and my mother bought 2 chairs that they were sort of like a lounge chair for her, one for her and one for me by the TV. And mine was by the TV, and her was across the room. And, of course, when Uncle Malcolm came, I had the best room and the best bed and the best seat in the house, so I had to surrender it. I had to surrender everything, my chair, my bed, everything to Uncle Malcolm. And I loved it. I mean, I love Uncle Malcolm slept in my bed. He's sleeping in my chair. So it was a privilege for me to have just a man, sitting in my chair. And he didn't want to, but there was an insistence before my mother. And so I remember him sitting there, and he was rocking and looking out the window and on Mass Avenue, and the FBI was sitting outside in their car, 2 FBI agents, and we were cooking supper, and my mother said, take a cup of coffee out to the agents and see if they want something. And so we're feeding them. This is Ella Collins and Malcolm. We're sitting in the front room, and I'm going out offering the FBI coffee. But they were there, so they're a witness. And that's what we wanted. We set that up for that to happen that way. Unbeknownst to them at the time, they know now. But anyway, and my uncle called me out of the kitchen. We were working with my mom. He said, Rodnell, I've said this before, your audience is not the first, but he said, Rodnell, come here for a minute. And I said, I'll be right there, Uncle. And my mother's looking at me and go. He says, Rodnell, come here for a minute. I want to talk to you. So, and he was, he had his dress pants on and a shirt, dress shirt. I can't remember if he had a tie or not. Usually he takes his tie off, and he was comfortable, and he's just slightly rocking in a chair, and he's looking out the window. He's staring out the window, and he wasn't staring at the car just sitting, the FBI agent's car that was sitting less than 50 feet away from our living room window. And he says, I want to talk to you. And he's slowly rocking, and he takes my hand. I'll never forget this. This man takes my hand, and he looks at me. He stops for a minute and looks up at me and into my eyes. And, I'm a little, oh, Uncle's looking at me. I don't know what, I don't know what's happening, what's wrong. But he's looking at me so compassionately and earnest. And he says, Rodnell, he says, I want you to listen to me. He says, I want you to listen to me. And always remember what I'm saying to you. And I'm looking at him, and I don't know what he's going to say. And he says, I always wished, and I wish I had to listen to Ella. I wish I had to listen to Ella. He said, Rodnell, you promised me. You promised me. You will always listen to Ella. And I think you'll be all right. And that was something that I'll never forget. And then I said, yes, Uncle. He said, promise me. And I said, yes. And so in that burial, he let go of my hand, and he went back to rocking and looking out the window, and I went back into the kitchen. But when I buried him, and my mother never asked me, what did he say?
Mm-hmm.
She knew. Now that I think of it saying to you, I just remembered now, she never asked me, what did you and your uncle say?
Mm-hmm.
She never bothered. I guess she knew. I don't know if she heard, but I know when I buried him, I promised him again that I would never be the nigger that he was fighting.
Mm.
I made that promise. No matter what I have to do, I'll try to be the man with consciousness that he and my mother wanted me to be. I made that promise, and I passed it along to my children.
Mm.
I don't do necessarily the best job I believe that I can do, but I know one thing. I'm not going to be some white man's nigger. I'd rather kill him first.
I heard that.
You know, I'd rather die fighting. You know that old Marable smoking, I'd rather fight than switch. I'm not switching. I'd rather fight. I find it a pleasure. It's an honor. It's a privilege. It's caused me problems in my life because I've gotten into fights. I love it. Bring it on. You're going to have some of this.
Oh, bro, right now, go ahead.
That's that.
So, bro, right now, I'd like to thank you once again for sharing so much of your time with us and with our listeners. In the words of the great Duke Ellington, we love you madly, sir, and I look forward to talking to you some more and also connecting with you on other levels.
Yes, sir. I hope you will email me the program, and I hope you have people that will call in and ask you questions. And if they do, I don't know if you get that or the email, however that works.
We do both ways. Like, we have people calling in and people sending email responses and stuff like that. And I'll definitely make sure that you are aware of what's going on in terms of people, how they respond to the interview. Because there's going to be 2 shows. I mean, he gave me 2 shows out of this. I really appreciate that.
Oh, very good. I hope it works for you very well, and I hope when I have an opportunity and I'm down in Memphis, Tennessee, come by and give you a shout-out.
No, I appreciate it. Yeah,
all right.
I definitely appreciate that.
All right, brother.
All right, brother. Now, take care.
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm.